Columbia Pictures is proud to present the screen's greatest action hero, Jack Slater.
Slater! Don't even think it, Slater, you hear me?
This is the Lieutenant Governor.
Slater, here's what I...
The governor gets here, call me.
And Danny Madigan is his biggest fan.
Jack Slater 4.
But tonight, a magic ticket
It's a passport to another world.
will get Danny closer to the action than anyone ever dreamed.
Holy cow! I'm in the movie!
Who the hell are you?
Don't shoot me! I'm Danny Madigan, I'm a kid.
And you're going with him
Who is this twerp, and where's that smile on his face?
I don't even know this kid.
to a world that's bigger than life
This ticket is magic, and it really works.
and better than real.
You really believe that you're inside a movie, don't you?
Yes! The bad guys are in there. I've seen it. On screen.
Could I speak to the drug dealer of the house, please? Have a nice day.
Have him killed.
This summer, it's head-on thrills.
I have killed people smarter and younger than you.
Head-first excitement.
I hate when it happens.
He's got the ticket!
Now I possess power. Real power.
He's going over to my world!
In this world, the bad guys can win.
The door must still be open, come on!
If I go, how do I get back?
And it's coming at you from both sides of the screen.
Where am I now?
This isn't the movies anymore, Jack. Please be careful. Things were different here.
Damn it, that hurt.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is Jack Slater.
This hero stuff has its limits.
And Jack Slater is
Everybody down! Now!
the last action hero. The big ticket for 93.
I'll be back. Ha! You did not gonna say that, did you?
That's what you always say.
I do?
Hello and welcome to Big Dumb Movie, where we discuss a different Big Dumb movie every episode. I'm your host, Corey, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Alan.
Hello.
And Steve.
Hello.
Hello, guys. Last action hero.
Good vintage.
Good vintage. It's a good year. It's 1993. A lot happened in 1993. I don't really remember because I was very little, but I'm sure a lot happened.
I was enjoying myself in 93 for sure.
That's gross, Steve. That's when you started, huh?
That was the summer I needed a tampon for the first time. Absolutely.
Oh boy. That doesn't sound enjoyable at all.
Oh, it was terrible. I didn't even really know how to use them.
There's a South Park joke in here somewhere, I think, like about putting a tampon in your ass. All right. How did we get here? No, literally, how did we... All right. So, I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
Disney live-action movies. They're pretty good, aren't they?
Fuck. Look, I appreciate a lot of other people are enjoying watching them, and that's totally fine. It's their prerogative. But, not for me. Not for me. I don't understand. The story was done properly once. Disney used to just re-release these films every handful of years. And all of
Fucking open that nice, shiny Disney vault.
Right. And it was a money grab, but at least little kids got to go to the theater to see the animated stuff, these beautiful animated films from the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I loved Pinocchio when I was a little kid, and that got re-released once. And it was huge for me to be able to go see it in theaters. And all my girl cousins really enjoyed getting to go see Snow White and Cinderella. It was a big deal.
Yeah, girl movies.
Girl movies, right. But yeah, and then I don't understand. What's the point? We need a live action Lion King, live action Mulan. Nah, that's okay.
What do you think, Alan?
Not a fan. I mean, I'm kind of with Steve on this. I saw a lot of those movies, pretty much all of them. I actually seen a lot of those movies because when I was a kid, my aunt used to play them a lot. Lion King's cool. I love that movie. But yeah, the live action doesn't seem necessary. I mean, it's just money.
They did a live action. Rudyard Kipling wrote a book called The Jungle Book. And one of many adaptations of it was a Disney adaptation. Most people are familiar with animated film. And they did a live action version of it a couple of years ago.
I'm going to stop you right there. So, this movie is something I've always wanted to talk about. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Steve.
No.
But how the fuck did this movie get forgotten? I remember loving that live action one. It's the one with Jason Scott Lee, right?
Well,
Is that
okay.
the one by Jon Favreau?
No, that's the newer one.
So, well, that's the thing here. There were 2 different live action adaptations that ended up coming out like 18 months apart from each other. And the release date on one ended up getting bumped to not compete with the other. One of the 2 was really an adaptation of the novel and was directed by Andy Serkis.
That came out on Netflix like last year.
Right, yeah. And the other one was a live action adaptation of the Disney version, which was much more musically oriented and basically a live action version of the Disney movie. And the version that Serkis did, I thought was really interesting. It wasn't perfect, but it was really, I think that's the one you might be thinking of.
I got about 40 minutes in. No, I'm talking about a movie that came out in around like 1994 or 1995.
Oh, you're talking about that version of the Jungle Book.
Yeah, no one talks about it.
No,
See, even you didn't even know what the fuck I was
that one?
talking about.
No, so there have been 3. Yeah, the 2 I was talking were recent. Yeah, I remember that one.
So you remember like Hook in the 90s where like Peter Pan's like older? There was a few kind of movies like that were Disney classic stories, but they were live action, but it was the character older. Mm-hmm. There was a Jungle Book one. So it was the same premise, but Mowgli stayed in the jungle and became like a grown man. Mm. And then as a grown man, he discovered other humans. It had Carrie Elway as the villain. Jason Scott Lee was, like I said, the Mowgli character. He was, Bruce Lee in the Dragon movie. He's pretty good. You like him, Steve?
I like him in general. Dragon is a mess. That movie.
Oh, come on, dude.
No, I mean,
is that the Hannibal sequel?
No. We've actually talked about
but that movie is a fucking mess,
That
too.
movie's a fucking mess. Look, it's actually on its own, it's not a bad movie. It's actually fairly compelling. It's very well acted. I understand. I like it to a degree, but like, it is so inaccurate in regards to Bruce Lee's actual life. It may as well have been about a different person. Like,
okay, so you're telling me that there wasn't a guy from China that came to America that was really good at kung fu, that became a movie star, and eventually died.
Well, that part is true.
Okay, that's the movie.
He actually came from Hong Kong.
Right?
Oh, shit.
You gotta get that right. They get really serious about that. No joke. If you call someone Chinese who's from Hong Kong and the other way around, they'll get super pissed about it.
Fuck. I fucked up.
You're
right. I fucked up. I apologize to the Lees if there are any left alive.
His daughter's still around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I apologize, ma'am. So what were we talking about? Live action Disney movies.
Yeah,
You're not into it?
No.
What if it's a not quite live action, but an all CGI version? Lion King. I'm talking about the Lion King.
Yeah.
I kind of have an issue in general with remaking movies I feel don't need or merit being remade. That being said, if it's going to be done with something like that, I personally would have find that idea a lot more palatable, I guess. Try it out with a different animation style. But I don't know.
So did you see Dumbo?
I haven't seen Dumbo. Typically, I would go see a Tim Burton movie, even though his last few have not been great, but I couldn't.
Wasn't Colin Farrell in that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I thought for sure Steve would see a Tim Burton movie that has Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito. At least.
That was the compelling part for me. It was a debate, and like I just kind of got to the point where it wasn't in theaters anymore. I will watch it. I'm going to watch it, but I have not yet. No.
I see.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to talk about Disney live action stuff because it's been something on my mind. Don't know why.
What's the next? Mulan, I think, is the next one.
Yeah,
right?
Mulan. I actually, let's talk about Mulan real quick, just for a minute.
We're not getting any Szechuan sauce this time around. That's frustrating.
One of you is going to have the right answer for this because there is a right answer. And it's not who's the Jesus character of Mulan,
good.
okay?
Just thinking that.
What is the best thing about the movie Mulan?
The original one or the remake?
Well, the animated 90s
animated one?
Mulan.
The Szechuan sauce.
No. It's not even mentioned in the movie. It's not in the movie. What's the best thing about the movie itself? Come on. For real.
The dragon character.
No.
Mushu?
Lame.
I don't know. What? The art? What is this? Some kind of, trick question?
It was nicely animated, but I don't think that's what Corey's going for.
All right. Well, you know what, listeners? You're going to hear the best part of the movie now.
Let's
That is such a good song, and they are not having it in the newer version.
What a shame.
No,
Oh, come on. I demand a little bit of outrage on this.
Corey's right though. That song's so tight.
That song is
when
tight.
they're training,
That's one of the
and
best Disney songs.
He's like teaching them how to be soldiers.
All right,
Yeah, I
what's
love
the
that song.
most underappreciated Disney movie? I have my own personal answer to this question, but I want to see what you guys think.
Animated?
Animated. What's the most
Okay,
underappreciated?
so I was going to say Brink, but okay, so.
You're right. What is if, in your opinion, if there is one, what is the most underappreciated animated Disney film?
All right, I'm going to just go with what I think Steve is going to say. What I think your answer would be.
Mine is,
which is The Rescuers.
that is basically spot on. I have a two-way tie, and The Rescuers is one of my two-way tie. Absolutely.
Dude, I loved The Rescuers Down Under.
Right?
That's a sequel, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's the one. It's the one
No,
where they're on
isn't it?
Australia.
That's
Yeah. That and in my opinion, the Black Cauldron the Black Cauldron. Actually, I would say three-way. I didn't even think of that myself. So Black Cauldron, Rescuers Down Under, and Sword in the Stone. Those movies get no love today, and I think they're like among the best ones Disney ever made.
I remember Gurgi and him being a weird, creepy piece of shit that I was glad died.
Right, man. I have some animation cells in the Black Cauldron. That movie was great.
Anyway, guys, if you're listening, if you like Disney, comment, tell us what you think about these live-action Disney movies, because I want to hear what the people have to say
Fuck
about
that. Shout out about The Rescuers.
it. Tell us the most underrated one.
Right, yeah. Pick out your own most underrated Disney movie if you agree with me or not. But you should.
So, I have a question for you, Steve.
Okay.
Last Action Hero, what is your experience with that movie? Did you get to see it in theaters in 93?
I did. I got taken to the theater to see this one along with my brother, as was pretty typical at the time. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it at the time. You know, more critical viewing of it today as an adult, but I had fun with it. I was kind of surprised as a teenager to find out it had not been a particularly successful movie financially. I thought it had done pretty well, and it turns out it didn't.
You know, I was also surprised to find that out.
Yeah.
Now, Alan, I know you hadn't seen it as a kid, or at least you heard of it. Maybe you've seen parts of it.
Yep.
Am I on the right track here?
Yep. Yeah, you got it.
So my question for you is, what's your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie?
I could take the easy answer and just say T2 because that's a classic. But
Damn.
I really do.
You're right. That is.
But I really do like Predator. I like Predator a lot.
That's a good choice.
That's like a classic Arnold movie.
The
and
Predator?
he just fits the Predator from 2017 or whatever year that was.
Yeah.
No, just Predator. Because he fits that really well. I mean, it's just like it was built for Arnold. I mean, it's just such a Arnold role where he's like the tough military guy fighting the Predator.
I love it.
Yeah.
Dylan, you son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, I love that movie.
I gotta come into work and just like do that to someone.
Alan, you son of a bitch.
You gotta do the
Do the
handshake. though.
handshake with the biceps.
The
Yeah.
biceps. The whole office explodes.
Just too much machismo. They can't handle it.
Windows just shatter.
I didn't get to see Last Action Hero in the theaters as a kid. I don't even think I heard about it at the time. Jurassic Park was like just in the public consciousness so much that that was all I could think about in 1993.
I saw the two of these the two of them like a week apart from each other. I think.
Well, Jurassic Park was released a week before this movie.
Yeah, and
it's
I
quite
know-
sad actually.
And they thought about delaying the release date on this, I think, to keep it away, and they just wanted to get it out.
So that had to have an effect on how well it did. I mean, like
It
you
basically
said, everyone's
ruined
gonna
this
see
movie.
Jurassic Park.
That was part of it. One other part of it was that the movie apparently did horrendously in test viewings, and people who'd seen it went and told other people it was terrible.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So, yeah, in fact, they destroyed all the comment cards from their screenings just to make sure they wouldn't leave the studio.
Oh my God, we gotta find those
Right.
some kind of like hidden treasure. The
And they-
comment cards from
Right.
Last Action Hero.
And Schwarzenegger, who was one of the producers, and the other producers were just like, well, should we delay it and try to recut it and keep it away from this Jurassic Park movie? And they were like, no, we got to get it out now or no one's going to see it at all. And they didn't finish shooting. It's very episode 4. Here's our Star Wars comment. Lucas was shooting episode 4 up until I think like 48 hours or something before the first screenings of it at the Chinese. And they did almost the same thing with this. I think they were shooting second unit stuff like 8 or 9 days before the movie was supposed to be released.
Wow, they were doing pickups that late into it.
Yeah. Like,
That's crazy.
Right.
You're right. Arnold Schwarzenegger did want to delay the release of this. I think it was said 3 to 4 weeks after Jurassic Park, which would have been enough time for your kind of avid moviegoer to be like, okay, what am I going to see next?
Now, yeah.
I saw Jurassic Park twice. What's next?
Dude, I did. It's funny. My mother took me to see Jurassic Park the week it came out, thinking my brother was too little for it. We all saw Last Action Hero the next week, and then my brother was begging my mom to see Jurassic Park. So she's like, well, do you want to go see it a second time? I was like, fuck yeah, I do. So the week after we saw Last Action Hero, we went back, saw Jurassic Park a second time.
Damn.
Right.
I wish I could have seen Jurassic Park in theaters.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, that's tragic.
I think I was in second grade, and I was in the Dino Club with my friends. We were dinosaur obsessed, as everyone was.
Absolutely, I was.
In the 90s.
Right.
And I would check out all the dinosaur books from the school library.
Fuck yeah, absolutely.
I would draw dinosaurs for like every art project I possibly had.
Right. One of the things my mother thought was most entertaining about me at like 7 is I had this huge poster in my room, had like 42 different kinds of dinosaur on it. When her friends came over, she would do this as like a party trick. She'd get me in front of the poster and be like, okay, name them. And I could just point them out and name them all.
Oh, here's a good one. I got a good story on this, actually. Here we go. So in Simi, Corey, off Tierra Rajada right before Madera? If you're going west, you passed Madera?
Yeah.
There's like some mobile homes, and there used to be a drive-in theater there.
Oh, there did?
Yeah, there used to be a drive-in theater, like a big one, for the longest time. And I saw Jurassic Park there at the drive-in. My parents took me at like a real like drive-in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was there forever, and they demolished it like years ago already. But
you must have been little.
Yeah, it was like what, 5?
That's crazy.
And here, real quick, one interesting, I think, from a technical perspective, one little touchdown. This would have been the second movie to have it, but ended up being the first because the other film got delayed in release. This ended up being the first film released to theaters to use a digital sound system developed by Sony called SDDS. There's no equivalent to that for home use. It's a theater-only system. But we were just discussing it and Jurassic Park came out a week apart. Jurassic Park was the first theatrical release to use a DTS soundtrack. So this is actually kind of a big, 10 days in movie technology because two movies debuting 2 new theatrical sound standards came out within a week of each other.
And theaters had to have the equipment to support this, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, even though not every theater had the equipment, Jurassic Park got a much wider release in DTS than this movie did with the Sony soundtrack. Most of the screenings of this played a different soundtrack because the Sony system required a special speaker arrangement and special decoding hardware most theaters didn't have at that point.
So which format became more popular? Or which one's
Both
better,
are still in use today. DTS is definitely more widely in use.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems, quote-unquote problems, with the SDDS system is that Sony designed it purely for theatrical release, so there's no way to translate it to a home audio track.
Unless I build a theater in my home.
Right. Yeah, and you'd have to have some very expensive decoding hardware. Right.
Shit. I wanted to say real quick, I was about to finish up on Jurassic Park when I was a kid. When I was a kid and I was in the Dino Club, my friends, who, again, we were in second grade, they got to go see Jurassic Park. Their parents took these little second graders to go see people get mauled by velociraptors, and I didn't get to. But how could I not? I'm in the Dino Club, right? So I lied. I came to school and I remember talking to the other kids, but they knew I was lying straight away. For somehow they all seen it. No one questioned them, but they called me out, right? So we were talking about it and I was saying how I saw it. And they're like, oh, you didn't see it. I was like, yeah, I saw it. I know. Ask me what happens, So they say, okay, what's the first thing that happens in the movie? And I say, well, they go into the gates and the gates open up and the car drives in because I think I'd seen that in a trailer.
That's great.
I just got wrecked for the next week,
Right.
I maintained my membership to the Dino Club, but
still paying your dues.
I was on probation.
The Dino Club sounds amazing.
It was pretty cool, yeah. Oh boy. So, Last Action Hero. Let's talk about this film. It was directed by John McTiernan. What other work has he done, Steve?
McTiernan did the original Predator. He did the first and third Die Hard movies. what else is he know? He did the remake of Rollerball, which is one of the worst films in his. Like the original Rollerball is kind of a B sci-fi classic. That remake is virtually impossible to sit through.
No, I've been really debating in my head about using my free pass on that Rollerball movie.
Oh, don't do it.
The 2002 Rollerball.
Yeah,
Didn't we talk about it?
You see, yeah, I think we may have. Like, see the original if you really want to. It's fun. It's not a great movie, but it's fun. Like, there's like a 4-minute segment to the remake that they shot in night vision for no explicable reason. Like, it's got Slipknot in it.
Yeah,
it's bad.
That's why I wanted to see it in high school.
Right?
I think
it was
we
one of the
talked about
appealing
it.
points at the time. Like, I will never forget. I won't delve too deep, but like, I will never ever forget. I standing in front of a theater with a friend of mine who I've known since we were 11 years old, debating with him whether we were going to see Rollerball or some other movie. I don't even remember what the other choice was. And I twisted his arm because my father had shown me the original from the 70s. I'd watched it on VHS in my room at home and I loved it. I had no idea what the remake was going to be like. I only knew that it was the same guy that had done Die Hard. And I was like, no, dude, Josh, come on. We got to see this. It's going to be awesome. The original one's awesome. It's John McTiernan is the dude who did Die Hard. When we walked out of the theater, I thought he was going to hit me. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad.
Bonds were broken that day.
Right?
What were you going to say, Alan?
I think we talked about it when we watched Hackers. I remember we talked about it.
We did talk about it. That's right.
Yeah.
I don't remember why, but yes,
Probably
you're right.
Steve brought it up because it's so bad.
We talked about John McTiernan. Did we mention that he did Predator, Alan's favorite Arnold movie?
Right?
He directed that film as well.
Yeah, so that means he worked with Arnold before.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah, so they were probably somewhat familiar.
And with their joint power, they were somehow to get the most insane cameos ever to be in a film, with maybe the exception of the movie Casper, which hadn't come out yet.
Dude, Casper on home video, no bullshit, is considered a reference quality disc. Both on Laserdisc and on DVD. The quality of that presentation was so good, it was actually on lists recommending to use it to show off a home theater system. Like,
Wait, you're talking about the one from like 94?
yeah, with Christina Ricci in
I
it.
think
Ricci in it.
96, I believe.
96?
Just
or
because
yeah,
the
that one?
quality of the transfer and the sound were so good. Honest to God. In any case, back to McTiernan. He also did The Hunt for Red October and a movie with Sean Connery and Elaine Bracco called Medicine Man. And The 13th Warrior, which is a really bad adaptation of a Michael Crichton book with Antonio Banderas.
Oh, I remember that movie.
Right? And the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair with Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, yes, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Ooh, I've
There you
always
go.
wanted to see that one.
See the original.
No, I want to see Brosnan, motherfucker. I like Brosnan. You know, for the longest time, I thought he was Montaro in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but it's definitely not him. Anyway,
No, he's not in that.
Last Action Hero. So it opens up. Well, maybe we should talk about what this movie's about. I mean, if you're listening, I guess
Sort
you
of
know.
get there.
All right, we'll get there. So it opens up with a police showdown. Now, Alan, I'd like you to go into what's happening here.
Yeah, so it opens up pretty much from the start. He just jumps into it. There's not really like an intro. You just see a bunch of police, and they establish that there's some kind of like really intense hostage situation. The police are pulling up in force. They're surrounding this building. Everything's chaotic. There's police everywhere. It's like a big deal. Like they gotta get this settled.
And we get to see our hero show up with his snakeskin boots, I think. How does he come? He like starts like walking on the cars.
He's like walking across the tops of all the police cars.
Yeah, like almost effortlessly. He's just kind of like strolling in, like, oh shit, here comes the backup, or here's the main hero.
And the chief of police is there, and he's like, "God damn it, Jack Slater, we can't have you. We got a hostage situation." And he just like keeps walking because he's fucking badass. He's Arnold Schwarzenegger, motherfucker. No, Arnold Schwarzenegger goes up to like the rooftop of this building, and he confronts this like outrageous Bond-style villain with an axe called the Ripper. Who's he played by, Steve?
Tom Noonan, one of my favorite bad guy character actors.
Tom Noonan. Now, what else he been in?
He also played a sort of side bad guy in the movie Heat, Michael Mann's Heat.
Oh yeah.
He was also the main bad guy Kane in RoboCop 2. And those are probably the most notable things. He has been in some other stuff that I remember fondly, but that other people might. He was in a movie from '86 called FX. It's about a special effects expert who's enrolled by the police to help them stage a mafia murder as part of an investigation.
Oh, that's cool. So he plays Mysterio.
Right? He was in a really fantastic movie from 87. It's one of my favorites called The Monster Squad, about a group of kids who encounter real-life versions of movie monsters.
Classic.
It is a classic, I think. And probably his other most significant leading role is a movie a lot of people aren't aware of called Manhunter, which was also a Michael Mann movie.
Oh, dude. Everyone knows Manhunter. That's the Hannibal Lecter.
Well, exactly. Okay, so obviously you're aware. Yeah, it was the first adaptation of a Thomas Harris book. It was adapted from the book Red Dragon, which was remade years later with Edward Norton in it.
That's a very interesting interpretation of Hannibal in that film, I think.
It really is. It really is. And Noonan's career, it goes way beyond that. I mean, I'm just scrolling through to see when the last thing he was in was. I don't remember. He had a lead part as recently as 2017. But he did a lot of his work during the 80s and 90s. He and another actor who nobody knows by name named Michael Wincott are probably my two favorite, like, oddball, creepy, bad guy character actors. I think they're great. I love to put them in something together. Like,
was he in Men in Black?
Tom Noonan?
Yeah, who was the guy with the dog or the
newsstand guy?
Yeah.
It was somebody else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like him.
The guy with no lines?
Yeah. It looks like him. I was like, no, okay.
So in our confrontation here in Last Action Hero, so Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Jack Slater. He's this cop, and he's confronting the bad guy. Now, the bad guy, the Ripper, has a bunch of hostages that are kids, and one of them is Arnold Schwarzenegger's son. And he's holding him, with the axe, and he says, all right, toss your gun. And he, tosses his gun. And we get our first of, many action trope gags.
Oh,
where he says, any others? And, he pulls out, another gun out of, his, the back of his pants. And then he's got, another holster, and he's got, a knife up his sleeve. Then he's got, another gun in his shirt somehow. He has, 10 guns on him somehow.
I love that scene. And you see him start to pile on the floor, in front of him. It's just, gun after gun. It starts off slow, like you said. He pulls one out. It's okay. And then there's another and another, and it's just, this pile of guns.
Yeah, and this is kind of sets the tone for the comedy in this film, I think, which is... I think it's really good. I like the comedy. I think all these little funny action bits are so stupid that they're great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the movie, whether you think it does it really successfully or not, most of it is a spoof of action films. Intentionally a spoof. It's supposed to be ridiculous. And, I think...
that's, the heart of this movie. That's exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it gets lost now, especially on anyone who's much younger than the three of us. But, the 80s was... Mid to late 80s and very early 90s was such an era for these, machismo, super violent action films where there's 142 people get killed, and you've got one muscle-bound hero who just shoots his way through the entire film, and Schwarzenegger was the lead actor in so many movies like that, Commando and Red Heat and this one and
Predator.
that one. Yeah. So it was the perfect time, and McTiernan had directed movies like that, and including some with Schwarzenegger in them, so it was just very apropos in that moment to take all the most ridiculous tropes and things. And the original scripts for this film were way more about that. The original drafts of this film took almost entirely in place inside the movie world, and was really focused on the futile cycle of constant violence, and they were actually going to examine what does this do to the other people, the civilians living in the movie world, and it kind of evolved from that.
Or the henchmen he mows down, their families.
Yeah.
When they're dead and they don't come home.
That is an interesting take for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, hold that thought for 1 minute, because that's pretty meta. So John McTiernan directed Predator and worked with Arnold on these big action movies. And now he's working with Arnold to make a spoof of those action movies that he did with that same actor.
Yeah, and I think this one in particular is making fun of or satiring Lethal Weapon in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of, including to the point where there's an actual Lethal Weapon joke in it, reference in it. But Schwarzenegger really liked the script for exactly that reason. He's just this is perfect. This is spoof the stuff I normally do.
They get the guitar riffs that are the Lethal Weapon score as well, where someone will say something and there'll be a little bit of a guitar lick,
that one moment,
a hanging note.
Right, the one moment where the black cop says 3 days from retirement.
2 days to retirement.
That is a ripped off line from Danny Glover's character in Lethal Weapon, and the the music that plays for 3 or 4 seconds is an actual riff from Lethal Weapon. They really did use the music.
Nice.
I love the 80s guitar.
Yes, me too.
I love that, the chords when it lingers with the distortion and you kind of hear the vibration. I love the 80s guitar riffs like that.
Yeah, it works perfectly with this.
Yeah.
And we were talking about spoofs and how this was a spoof of those movies, especially Lethal Weapon, which I think was directed by Shane Black, who was also in Predator as an actor.
That's right.
The other day, I was going down to my girlfriend. I said to her, "Jeez, you got a big pussy. Jeez, you got a big pussy." She said, "Why did you say that twice?" And I said, "I didn't." See, it's because of the echo.
And Shane Black came onto this movie to do rewrites, which is kind of interesting. So, they kind of all got worked on this movie. You got Shane Black, you got McTiernan, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger as an executive producer. So
the two guys that wrote the original draft or the original 2 or 3 drafts actually specifically said how ironic they found it that his movies were a huge part of the inspiration for this script to begin with, and then he got brought on for rewrites.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, actually. So, in this whole scene that we were talking about before, the Ripper basically gets taken out by Jack Slater, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he takes out Arnold's son, right? So, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's son is dead as well. And then we kind of realize, as it shows the next shot, that this is all it's a movie within the movie we're watching. So, a kid in the movie, who is named Danny?
Danny.
Yeah, played by Austin O'Brien. He's watching this film, and he's a big action movie fan. He watches all of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies, and the current top movies that are out are the Jack Slater series, I guess, kind of like the Terminator series or whatever.
And he's specifically fond of those.
Yes.
You also find out that Danny lives in New York, but the Jack Slater in movie universe takes place in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you switch back and forth between Los Angeles and New York.
Oh, you're right. The what we're going to refer to as the real world is Danny's world, and then the movie world would be Arnold Schwarzenegger's world. I know it's going to get kind of confusing because we're talking about a movie.
Right. Well, and a large part of the production happened in it. The theater he goes to see these movies is really the inside of the Orpheum, which is in Los Angeles. But you're not supposed to know that.
Right.
There was a Reddit thread 5-6 months ago, I remembered, about this movie, particularly the scene when Arnold shows Danny his apartment after Danny goes into the movie. And when he shows him his apartment, it's on the side of the 101 there, and it's somewhere in Van Nuys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
His empty apartment that just has a henchman waiting. That's a pretty funny scene because he walks into his apartment. He walks up to the closet and he just fires his gun into the closet, and then he opens the closet and a villain dressed in all black with guns just falls out dead.
Yeah, and he's totally casual about it. They're always there.
Yeah.
He does
the kid
this
says,
every
well,
day.
what the? How did you know he's in there? Oh, there's one in there every time.
Every day I just murder some guy.
No paperwork, nothing.
But yeah, his apartment's supposed to be in Van Nuys or somewhere right there.
Oh, nice. The beautiful city of Van Nuys.
Welcome to the valley.
Van Nuys sucks. All right, so Steve, do you want to get us to the point where the kid enters a movie? I mean, that's where it really kicks off, but can you lead us up to that?
So we meet Danny. He's in the theater watching Jack Slater 3. And the movie has come out of focus, and he's yelling up to the projection booth to get it back to focus, which doesn't happen. We find he's the only person sitting in the auditorium watching. And when he goes up to the projection booth to find out what's happening, we find that the projector is run by an old elderly man named Nick, who apparently runs the whole theater by himself. It's kind of unexplained why, but he's the only person who's ever there. There's no other staff, at least not that we ever see or hear mentioned. And the theater seems to have no customers, yet somehow he's running it, and they're going to be getting new movies.
There's also graffiti on the walls. The restroom is spray painted on the wall for some reason.
Yeah, it looks like the place is not being kept up, and people vandalize the inside, and Nick's clearly not really on top of shit. And the movie is already over by the time Jack Slater 3, which is what Danny's been watching, is already over by the time he gets up to the projection booth. But Nick confides to him that he's gotten the release prints for Jack Slater 4, which is the upcoming next chapter, and that at midnight on the night they're having this conversation, Nick will be test running the reels for Jack Slater through the projectors, and that if Danny can find his way to the theater, Nick will let him sit in the auditorium and watch the movie.
Right.
And it's kind of inferred here and then reinforced later that Danny does not go to school. He's supposed to be going to school, but he's truant more often than he's not. And
he's addicted to these Slater films,
right?
Like hardcore addicted.
Well,
right?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's not only is he spending all of his time, or at least most of his time during the school day, in this theater with this older man, but apparently,
what's really going on,
right? But apparently, Nick just runs the first 3 Slater movies for him over and over and over and over, and it's like, who is supporting the continued business of this theater? There's got to be someone other than this one kid buying tickets to see stuff.
The kid and this man have some kind of deal that they don't talk about in the movie.
Like, right? Yeah, who's paying to keep the theater open?
And they're like in the middle of downtown New York. Like,
yeah, it's supposed to be somewhere like in Queens or the Bronx. They never really tell you exactly.
But someone like yells "forget about it" at some point, so you know it's New York.
Forget about it.
So like it's very weird. So Danny resolves that he's going to come back at midnight to see this.
He does go to school briefly though, and I actually do want to talk about that real quick because while he's in school, in his class, they're apparently showing, is it Hamlet?
Yeah. Well, they're supposed to be showing, Olivier's version of Hamlet, but It's not really Olivier's version of Hamlet.
Right. But it's kind of, that's the vibe you're getting. And while he's watching it, he just like has this like elaborate sidekick style fantasy that like the hero is Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater. And he's just in there just like fucking gunning people down and kicking everyone's ass. Alan, did you like that part?
I love that part because it's sort of semi-serious in the film. But then the part that got me was you see Arnold, you're like, okay, now this is getting ridiculous. But when he pulls out like the Uzi, he has a sword, and then at one point he just pulls out an Uzi and starts shooting people. It's like, okay, it's beyond like...
It's beyond insane.
Yeah.
Basically.
But yeah, he ends up going to school, but he shows up at school like 4 hours late. And it's like, I don't know. It's very weird that like the kid can skip this much school. It's only really mentioned once during the film. His mom gets slightly mad at him for not going to class. Like, this is a real problem.
This kid reminds me of the kid from Kazam.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he doesn't rap or anything, but like,
thankfully,
he has a similar haircut, and like, he's, kind of like not into his schooling in the same way. You guys remember Kazam, right?
Vaguely,
you talking about the one with Sinbad?
Yeah.
He's a genie.
Wait, there's...
I'm just kidding. It's Shaq.
I was going to say, well, but you know the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole thing. That specific, like, and honestly...
Were you about to think I was from the Mirror Universe?
Right? Well, but you know what? Like, somebody tested me on that like 2 years ago. They were like, hey, who was in that movie? And my response was Sinbad. Like, I remembered it that way too. I don't know why.
Oh, we're both from the Mirror Universe.
Right?
Dude, you want to talk about that? Do you guys remember the Bernstein Bears?
Yeah,
the Bernstein Bears?
Berenstein Bears.
The Berenstein Bears.
It's Stain.
Bernstein.
That's the thing. Staин. Seriously.
It is.
Bernstein Bears, yeah. That's bullshit.
Either way, they're Jewish, right?
They're definitely kosher bears. That's all you need to know. Like.
So, where were we?
So the kid misses school unexplainably. He's going to watch Jack Slater 4.
At midnight. And
does this when he gets a ticket? When does he get the ticket?
Well, do you remember what happens when he tries to go to the theater, Alan? Like, he leaves his apartment, and then...
Oh, yeah, okay.
He goes home first and has a discussion with his mom.
He goes home. He has a discussion with his mom, who tells him to lock the door. She's basically saying, like, you can't go, you're going to stay inside. She leaves to go to work, but of course he's like, no, I'm going to go see this movie. He opens the door for a second, and you see kind of like a shadowy figure cross the door sill, but then he closes it, and when he opens it again...
Surprise, motherfucker!
This guy just like pops in with a knife and like basically breaks into his house.
Yeah, this guy breaks in with the intent to rob them, but apparently they don't have any goods at all except for a really old TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a very nice apartment building, and it's not in a very nice part of New York. Like, why would you think there was going to be anything nice in there to take? Like, this is clearly, I don't even mean it to be shitty, it's like clearly a place where poor people live.
The guy's like, where's the jewels?
Right?
Like, what fucking jewels?
You're like 16 blocks from the, go to Upper Manhattan or something. You want the nice apartments. There's no jewels here.
This whole scene confused me. Because I was like, why is this even in this movie?
I'll tell you why. It's planning and payoff, my friend. So the only reason this scene is in the movie is so that he can get a handcuff key that he uses at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, now I just realized that because
That's the only reason, though. I think,
it's just such a ridiculous thing to put in this movie. Like, it's a pretty intense scene. Like, he gets freaking robbed at knife point. And it's like, why? What does this establish, or why is this in this movie?
Yeah, and then they run through it real quick. Like, he goes to the police station, and then 5 minutes later, he's at the movie theater. Who cares?
Yeah, they never reference it again. It's not important. Nothing ever comes of it. They never mention it. Like you said, it's like 5 minutes at the police station. It's like, oh, that just happened.
Handcuff key. It's one of those tropey movie things. You know, there'll be a scene at the beginning of an action movie where, like, somebody gives the main character a gun, or somebody gives the main character a knife, or somebody gives the main character, like, a magic jewel. And it's always like, oh, here's this thing that, like, there's really no reason for me to be giving you now. And then, oh, how convenient in the climax, the hero needs that specific thing.
But you forgot about it because it happened earlier in the movie.
Yeah, you didn't even remember. It's like, oh, he's got that thing. How convenient. That's totally worked out for him.
Yeah, when that guy broke in and almost stabbed him.
All right. Thank God that happened, because now he's got this handcuff key.
Well, let's get to the theater, because this is where our hero, I guess, Danny... I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's a hero. This kid, Danny, he sees Nick, and Nick's, kind of been waiting for him to show up so he can play Jack Slater 4. But Nick has something special for the kid. He has this really old movie ticket that was given to him apparently by Harry Houdini a long time ago when Harry Houdini visited that movie theater. And Harry Houdini got it from some other older magician who got it from I guess it's been passed down from, like, magician to magician.
Yeah, from some, like, Tibetan mystic.
Yeah, he goes on some rant about how it's special.
No real sense in why a Tibetan mystic would have a giant movie ticket, but fuck it.
No, they're big into movies, yeah.
Right? Yeah, when you live at...
The Dalai Lama sees movies all the time.
Oh, yeah, when you live at the top of a mountain in Tibet, like, you're like, hey, where are we going to the movies this weekend? I've got this big ticket.
No, they watch them on their phones.
Oh, that's what it is. I heard the reception up that high is great.
Yeah.
This is just Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. He gets the golden ticket.
He does get a golden ticket.
Yeah. Same shit.
The movie's obnoxious.
The best part, though, is how he explains his golden ticket and all this mystic bullshit. And then he, like, proceeds to immediately, like, rip it in half.
Yeah, like,
but
as
you
if,
find
like,
out there's a reason for that later.
As if they're ripping the ticket, like, when you have an actual ticket. But it's just like, I got this really nice thing. And the guy takes it and he just, like, rips it in half. And he throws half of it away.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Why? You've been holding on to this for, like, 50-plus years. You destroyed it the moment you gave it to the kid. Like, it also doesn't make sense that it's, like, got to be torn in half to work. It's like, that was the magic. It's like, now that it's been torn in half, it works.
Yeah, what kind of spell can you do where it's like, okay, with this magic spell, it's only going to work if it's torn in half, though?
You've got to damage this for it to be magic.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Basically, yeah. Makes no sense. And I love the whole thing. After, at the end, he realizes it worked. He's like, oh my God, I just never tried it. It was like, of course you didn't fucking try it. No one's going to believe a movie ticket's magic. Who the fuck would have tried it? How would you have tried it? Were you going to walk up to a movie screen and see if you could pass through?
I'm going to be honest. I would have tried it.
Dude, I would have too when I was 10 and this movie came out. I would have been like, hey, I want to see if this shit works. But, like, he's an adult.
I love thinking about the opposite of this movie. Like, what if, like, he tried that and just, like, kind of went through the screen? Like, it, like, actually didn't work. He just, like, crashed through because he's just dumb. Like, you thought you could go through the movie? He just falls through the screen.
Can you imagine? What you give that... Fuck, the Danny character is supposed to be, what, 14? 13, 14?
I was like, yeah.
You give something to a kid that age, you just, especially now with computers, you just be walking into porn. He's not even going to bother with any real movies. He's going to open up the first lesbian porn he can find on his computer, just be like, bye, Mom. Like...
Last Action Hero 2019.
Right? I mean, fuck it, dude. I was doing it on a 14.4 modem when I was that age. Look, when you're committed, you get what you're looking for. Like,
well, enough about Steve's crippling porn addiction.
Right? Like, I'm down to like 35 hours a week. Give me a break.
So the kid's watching the movie. He's watching Jack Slater 4. The movie is just showing its intro scenes of like the villains are torturing a guy, which we find out is Jack Slater's favorite second cousin.
Yeah, they mentioned that several times.
It's Art Carney.
It's Art Carney. I think it's a nice touch, though. And the writers had commented about it years later to say that, like, the whole idea with that was supposed to be, like, it's ridiculous by intent. That, like, this guy is such a caricature of an action hero and has been through so many ridiculous things and so many huge adventures with so many big bad guys that, like, they, within the context of that universe, they've gotten to the point where they've just got nothing left.
Yeah.
And now the bad guys are just going after his, like, second cousins.
And he's, like, super serious about it. Like, no one messes with my second cousin.
Right? And it's kind of funny if you think about it that way. It's like it's the fourth time out with this cliche action hero. He's like, the story is so stretched, they're now going after his second cousins. Like, it's kind of amusing, I think. Right?
Go after his barber.
Right, yeah, exactly.
No one
Like
messes
that
with
idea.
my
barber.
Right.
But anyway, the kid starts watching the movie, seeing all that go on. Then he sees, Slater on the film. And there's an action sequence that takes place. Like, Slater goes to rescue his second cousin, but then his house blows up. That's when the ticket activates, right? During this action scene.
Yeah.
So there's, like, some, like, magical fucking energy flowing from the ticket that, like, zaps the kid into the movie. And then that's the whole premise. Ridiculous action movie. A kid in the quote-unquote real world gets sucked into it.
Yeah, the ticket starts, like, glowing. It has some weird, like, effect around it. Like, it's temporal.
Yes.
And then he, like, wakes up in the scene. He wakes up in the scene when Arnold's being chased by the villains in his car. So Arnold's in the middle of a chase scene, and he gets teleported to, like, the back seat.
When you say temporal, you're not talking about, like, deep fried shrimp.
No, that sounds bomb, though.
Oh, that's tempura. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I get those two confused.
Snack time.
Right?
And we're back. So, Alan, do you want to tell us about that action scene? It's so over the top and insane.
Oh,
I feel like it has to be described a little
scene.
bit.
Yeah, so after they blow up Jack Slater's house in the fictional movie, the bad guys show up on like this like 1950s like Ford truck, which I never got. It's
And
on,
they're
old-ass
chasing
truck.
Jack in what, Steve?
Oh, man. I forgot to even pay attention to what
It's
he's
like
driving.
a 50s Ford or something.
Yeah, the pickup truck's like, I think even a 30s or 40s or a Ford pickup truck, and he's driving an Impala or some domestic car convertible from the 70s. I wasn't even paying enough attention to notice.
Damn, I expected more from you, Steve.
Yeah, normally I would have taken like a full mental list of every car in the movie. It's like,
But anyway, go ahead, Alan.
The bad guys show up. There's like a group of them. They're like hanging on this truck. So like 5 of them. They all have guns. Just like this like wild gang. And they're chasing Jack Slater. So there's a car chase. They're going through traffic. They're speeding. They're skidding out. They're sliding around turns. It's just over the top. And at that point, that's when Danny gets teleported to the back seat. So Danny, I actually kind of like that part. It was a very small part, but I don't even know how he gets teleported. The ticket activates, and everything kind of goes blank for a minute. There's no sound. It's like silent, and you kind of see like Danny come to. It like takes him a minute to be like, what the fuck happened? And I actually like that because I thought they do it well, where it's quiet, and then it takes him like a couple seconds, like, where is he?
Right, and there's a bunch of action music playing. There's insane amounts of explosions. Anytime Arnold Schwarzenegger shoots like a car like on the sidelines, it blows up.
Wasn't
there like a death by an ice cream cone at some point?
One of the villains flies into an ice cream truck, and then the whole thing explodes. And then they cut to a scene where one of the guys in the truck falls face forward, and his back of his head is impaled by an ice cream cone.
That's pretty nice.
And at one point, Arnold is shooting at them without driving. And Danny that's one of the first things Danny's like, how are you driving without like driving? Because Arnold's like aiming at the guys and he's like driving still somehow.
it's like I do it with my feet.
Yeah.
It's like you can learn to do it with lots of practice, but never in heavy traffic.
So yeah, Danny's immediately like, what's going on? And
the villains too, they also have a box of Acme dynamite,
right?
Which they're lighting and throwing indiscriminately, and it's blowing up everything on the sidelines. It's landing in the car sometimes they throw it and Arnold like shoots it midair and it goes back. Right. There's like crazy, like the laws of physics are being broken. It's just insane.
At one point, Arnold lights his cigar with one of them. I love it. He always has a cigar, and he lights his cigar with one of the dynamite sticks.
Yeah, classic, like, badass action hero move. And toward the end, there's a moment where the kid Danny talks to Jack Slater, and he says, like, I thought I was gonna die. And Arnold says, oh, you'll get to live to enjoy the fruits of life. I'm gonna put that bit in here. It's pretty funny.
Sorry, I thought I was gonna die.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're gonna live to enjoy all the glorious fruits life has to offer. Acne, shaving, premature ejaculation, and your first divorce.
Right.
But when this all wraps up, they play chicken, which happens a few times in this movie. So chicken, for those that don't know, that's when you have like two cars that are like facing each other that are a distance away, and they start driving toward each other full speed, and whoever swerves loses, I guess, right? So in the movie universe, anytime Arnold Schwarzenegger plays chicken with someone, they're always going to swerve and die, right? And that's just the first example of that, and that comes back a few times. So the kid is with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jack Slater. I'm going to probably interchange these names the whole time.
Yep.
But basically, Arnold Schwarzenegger goes back to where he works. He's a detective or a cop. So he goes back to the police station. Now, the police station is fucking insane.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Steve, can you tell us about what we see at this police station?
Well, I mean, you start off as they're going in, you see Sharon Stone as her character from Basic Instinct and Robert Patrick as the T-1000 from T2 coming out. Apparently, I have no idea why they cared enough that they really had to have her do that bit. But, like, Schwarzenegger had been in Total Recall with Sharon Stone, and apparently nothing huge happened, but they didn't really get along and didn't like each other much. And he apparently called her personally to say, hey, would you do this cameo? And she's like, nah, I don't really want to. I didn't like working with you last time. And like the version of the story I've heard is that he basically said something to the effect of like, fuck you, that movie helped your career tremendously. And she was like, fine. I guess when Arnold Schwarzenegger wants you to do something, you do it, which is between that and premature ejaculation, probably how you end up having a kid with your maid. But,
well, goddamn.
Right? But,
what else is going on at the police station?
Right. They get into the police station, and it's like an exaggerated movie police station. Like, all the cops are like either beautiful women or these perfectly huge buff men.
People are being arrested, processed,
and like occasionally you get some weird, ridiculous characters. And you see a lot going on in the background while Danny and Jack are having a meeting with Jack's captain, where like, excuse me, they're handing out assignments, and like one of the cops is like a Hasidic rabbi in full like Jewish religious garb.
Yeah.
And one of them is an animated cat.
Well, what the guy at one of the desks is doing is he has two lines of people, and he's teaming up people that like wouldn't go together
at all.
So he like teams up the rabbi with this guy with a completely German name,
right.
So they get put together. And then there's like this really attractive female cop, and she gets put with this like hugely overweight guy.
Right.
So he's just making like odd couples. Like that's just what they do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's the typical like odd partners trope in police movies. Like one cop always ends up with a partner like he can't get along with. We're too different, Captain.
They just don't understand each other.
He's too green. I've been doing this for 28 years. Like, so yeah, definitely a lot of play on that. And one of the tropes they visit is the very angry police captain. It's another kind of thing sort of been lost in time because the trope doesn't appear as often in modern films, but like 80s, early 90s, so a lot of television shows and movies where like the cop is sort of a renegade and he's constantly going off on his own. He's constantly destroying property and causing car crashes, doing crazy stuff. And the captain is always just mad about it. He's yelling about it. Oh, you have no idea. City Hall's constantly on my ass, and the mayor says this, and the governor, blah, blah, blah. You don't have any idea. The charity event's coming up, and the re-election campaign, you're causing all this trouble for me.
I want your badge.
Yeah, I want your badge on my desk now. You can't keep doing this, Slater. And, like, the captain character in this is very much that. Like, it's another one of these knocks on, like, here's another stupid action movie thing.
Yeah, and I watched the movie recently. It was on, and I was kind of watching it. That has some of these tropes. It's a movie that came out later than this, much later actually, called Rush Hour. You guys remember Rush Hour, right?
There you go.
I love Rush Hour, the first one.
It's funny you say that because after rewatching it, it is the cringiest fucking movie I've ever seen.
It's not a good movie.
It is so cringy. Alan, I dare you to rewatch it. Every joke is just like, ugh.
They did not get better. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Like, Jackie Chan's, to this day, best movies are the ones he made before he started making American movies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, the most fun to watch. I'm going to show you guys this, but his best dramatic role is The Karate Kid. I will demonstrate this to you guys.
You can certainly give it a try.
I think you just triggered Steve.
Right?
That's an aggression, Corey. You triggered Steve.
I now am like neck deep in PTSD. So thank you.
I saw Steve pause. Like Steve was speechless for a couple seconds there.
No, but I like his old movies. I like Drunken Master, the sequel, Legend of the Drunken Master as well.
Super Cop.
And I mean,
Super Cop's good.
Super Cop. Yeah, okay. I will say
that's a little bit of a later one.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's and that one they released it in America, but like that was a Hong Kong production.
Oh, it was.
And, yeah, I mean, original. A lot of those movies, Police Story is a different one, but like, Who Am I was one of them.
Yeah, Who Am I? That was a good one.
And there were 2 or 3 others that came out here, like between 93 and like 96 or 97.
It's the one where he fights the kickboxer. That's a good one.
Rumble in the Bronx.
Rumble in the Bronx.
Not that one. He fights an actual guy that's a kickboxer. It's an older one. It's like from the 80s, I think.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, I know what you mean.
Even the ones that were big here, because a lot of Americans, especially at that point, were totally unaware of like Legend of Drunken Master and stuff. What they knew were movies like What's My Name and Super Cop and blah, blah. And most of those films came out here 2 to 4 years after their initial release in Hong Kong. And, those ones were pretty cool, though. But yeah, the one called Police Story, one called Tokyo Raiders. Like, he did some really cool stuff before he got to the point where he was doing Rush Hour movies.
Yeah, and we all know that, though. Like, peak Jackie Chan, the best of the best, Shanghai Noon.
Fuck. I will contend, unless there's something I'm not thinking of, which is certainly possible, Owen Wilson has never been in a good movie that was not directed by Wes Anderson.
Okay, I was going to say Bottle Rocket.
Well, there you go. All right.
We can't forget Operation Condor. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I remember liking that one a lot, actually.
That was a cool one.
You remember liking that one a lot.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid. Is it not good?
I mean, look, as a kid, totally. Try watching it as an adult.
All right. I'll rewatch Operation Condor.
Right. Can we follow it up with Operation Dumbo Drop? We can do like 2 operations in a row.
We can play Operation. Right. Is it water on the knee?
Look, I bet if we say Operation the movie, sometime in the next 2 years it'll happen.
Hey, we're getting Tetris.
How meta can we go?
Fuck.
I thought we were.
Really? Yeah.
I thought we were getting the fidget.
I'm not lying. We're getting Tetris.
I'm not finishing the podcast. I'm going to go home and cry.
Steve's going to go kill himself.
I'm done. Yeah, that's it. I've already had to sit through an Emoji movie. They're making a sequel to the Angry Birds movie. I'm done.
Don't forget about the fidget spinner movie.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Is that a thing?
I don't think so.
Okay, look. That's not a movie they're making, but there is like an article I saw where the guy who made the Emoji movie said he actually wanted to make that. So it's in the air. He said he wanted to. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's out there.
Movies used to be such a great thing.
All right. So to get back to the story here, our kid Danny, he gets teamed up with Slater. So in course of action movie like fashion, the police chief says, "All right, well, meet your new partner," and it's the kid.
Why? He's like 14-year-old kid who fell into your car, who's not a police officer, who you're not returning to his parents. Like,
well, he can see that they'll have a good dynamic. That's what they do at that police station. You guys will both learn something.
Right.
They're all about lessons.
Seems to be psychic.
I want to pause this for a second because Steve glossed over what is probably the best character in this whole movie.
Oh.
Who makes an appearance and actually turns out to be super helpful later.
Hell yeah.
Mr. Whiskers?
Yep,
Mr. Whiskers.
That cat's one of the best men I have on the force.
Whiskers is voiced by Danny DeVito, and he is an animated cat. So unlike everyone else in this film,
like
he's
frisky cat.
He's an animated character, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit style. It's very out of place.
Yeah.
So the kid is actually trying to convince Arnold for a lot of the movie, a lot of the second act that he's in a movie world, and that's one of the things he uses to make his case. He's like, well, that's an animated character, and Arnold's like, he's one of the best guys we have on the force, or whatever.
He's like, he says to me, like, there's an animated cat out there, and the Jack Slater character's response is like, yeah, well, of course he's out there. He was only suspended for a month. And then the chief's like, that cat's one of the best men I have on the force. Which is like that moment is like probably my favorite dialogue in the whole movie. Like that 90 seconds where the three of them are discussing the animated cat. Best written part of the movie. It's fucking hilarious.
Another thing that they do, and this is actually shortly after, so the kid's still trying to convince Arnold that you're actually a movie character. I come from the quote unquote real world, and this is all a movie. And he's telling him all the reasons why. So he takes him to a Blockbuster. I don't think it's actually called that, but it's a video rental place. It's like a Blockbuster.
Yeah.
It's like a Blockbuster at its peak. It's like 1993 perfect, like peak Blockbuster.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Peak Blockbuster.
It is. Yeah.
He takes him in there and he tries to find the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie section. Obviously, that doesn't exist in the context of this world.
But yeah, he asks for where are the Schwarzenegger films, and the girl behind the counter is like, oh, the foreign films are over there, and they never go look. It's like, well, wait, go look over there. I want to see what foreign films he's been in.
He hasn't been in any movies in this movie, Steve. None.
She tells him to go look in the foreign film section.
I think the joke is...
She doesn't know who he is?
That's like a foreign-sounding name.
Okay, fine.
But they go to the... the Terminator 2 like cutout, right? So it's like a, what do they call those? Like a cardboard
standee.
Yeah, a cardboard standee of Terminator 2, and this is like everyone's joke that they remember probably from this movie. It's Sylvester Stallone.
This movie came out 2 years after T2. There's no way any Blockbuster still would have been promoting the home video release of T2 at that point. Like, it's a stretch.
I've seen those VHS promotions of T2 on YouTube. They're so extensive and weird. Like
they're awesome. They're great.
Telling you to buy 2 VHSs like of it, and you get a deal for the third one. Like, why would you buy so many VHS copies of T2?
Our T15 pre-pack contains 12 units of T2, along with 3 units of live second December release, Drop Dead Fred. With this pre-pack, we'll give retailers an exclusive T2 sweatshirt, a T2 hat, and T2 sunglasses, a total value of over $50. And it only gets better.
Fuck, I own 3 different copies on Laserdisc and 2 on DVD, so I'm the idiot. But like, no VHS tapes anymore. I don't have any of those left. Speaking of, I think there's a section you see in the rental store. It's labeled Laserdiscs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which was still a thing at that point in history, so...
So next they go to the villain's house because the kid has all the answers. He's seen the beginning of the movie, right? So he's like, well, I know where the main like villain is, the guy that's planning whatever fucking plot. I don't even know what the plot in the movie is, but he basically says, look, the villain you're looking for, the guy is at this house. So he takes him there, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is very skeptical, right? But they go up to the door and they do see the main villain. Well, first they see the big Asian dude from Three Ninjas. Remember that guy?
Yeah, I think isn't he also the bodyguard or the doorman at
He's been in a couple movies.
Yeah, you know, in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah, anytime you knock on a rich person's door, this guy is there somehow.
And I'm pretty sure he was in a Bond movie. Like, but yeah. But okay, something's occurring to me right now. Like, for the first time. This is the first time I've ever had this thought about this movie.
Ooh, an epiphany.
Right? Like, he's watching Jack Slater 4, which is being projected off of a reel of film. So when he gets sucked into it, what he's getting sucked into is that reel of film. So, like, how does that send him in a movie world? And, like, that movie's already been made. Like, you're watching it. So how do you affect its story? And, like, does it affect the other prints?
Steve, have you ever heard of the multiverse theory?
Yeah,
I mean, that's really what we're getting into here.
It is.
Like,
yeah.
This movie's way deeper than I ever gave it credit for.
He's not actually going in the film. He's going into just a multiverse.
So just the screen and that movie was just the gateway to that multiverse.
Yeah, whatever's similar enough to what's on screen.
It's a stretch, but all right.
It is.
I'll allow it. Yeah. I love this scene because when they show up to when they first get to the house, Arnold goes on this rant. He's like, oh, look, he's like, I did years of schooling. I was in the academy. We did all this stuff so I can point at a house and be like, he's there. Or whatever.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to put that in here. It's really good.
It's really funny. Yeah, he's just pissed off. He's like, all I had to do was say he's there.
There, guys, or in there.
You know something? I think you should be wearing this.
I don't think I've earned it yet.
You don't understand. You just solved the entire case. You just revolutionized the entire history of police training. I mean, all these years at the academy. studying human character, psyche of the terrorist, fingerprint analysis, all the courses that I've taken in surveillance, hostage negotiation, in criminal psychology. When all I had to do is just drive around the neighborhood and point my finger at the house and say, the bad guys ain't there.
So when they get to the house, they see Benedict, who is the main villain of this film. He's played by Charles Dance.
I love Charles Dance.
Why do you love Charles Dance?
He's a great actor. Like
Is he though?
No,
is he though?
He really is. I mean, he hasn't gotten the opportunity to be in the lead in that many movies. But like seriously, he really is. He was in Alien 3. He's one of the highlights of Alien 3. I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but it really is not that bad.
David Fincher film?
Yeah. Well, what ended up being a David Fincher film, sort of. But like, no, he is. He's a really good actor. He's a lot of supporting parts, but I like him. He's fucking the head of House Lannister in Game of Thrones.
That's true. I'll give him that.
You know?
Yeah. That's pretty respectable.
His performance in Alien 3 was very good. Anyway.
So he's the main villain. He's got kind of like a little Bond physical gimmick where he has like a glass eye. And usually he puts in like an exploding eye, which comes up later. But anyway, they kind of have a little confrontation with him, but it doesn't really go anywhere. They do go back to Slater's house, though, and we get to meet his daughter. She is played by Bridget Wilson. She was also in Mortal Kombat. I think this was her first movie, though, right?
It was. It was the first thing she was in real life, so it was kind of meta with the fact that, like, her character, Jack's daughter character, was supposed to be newly introduced to the franchise within the world of the film. So it was an actress playing her first part in a major film as a character who was appearing for the first time in a film. And, like, yeah.
Yeah.
I love this scene because when they show up to the house, Danny finds like this wad of money, and Arnold explains how it's like evidence for like counterfeit money, and he's been paying his alimony with it.
Yeah. Counterfeit money.
Yeah, he's like, I'll just make alimony.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's from the evidence locker.
Yeah.
Counterfeit. I've been paying my alimony with it.
That's a great line. It's a great touch, man.
Yeah, just so casual about it. I love that. I was like, what?
I know, and like I said, the comedy, I feel like it works pretty good, like in that respect. But basically what happens over here at Arnold's place is Arnold Schwarzenegger leaves to get some cigars. It's just the kid and the girl that are at the house, but then the henchmen all break in.
He's not really going to get cigars. He's having sort of a PTSD moment thinking about his son dying. And then he really just wants to be out of the house. And Charles Dance's character knew something was up because after Danny and Jack visited him at his house, he overheard Danny telling Jack specific details of the murder of Jack's second cousin. And he knew, wait, this kid actually knows what happened.
And he told him like he hates the boss or something.
Yeah, he calls him a Sicilian schmuck.
So what happens when Benedict and his goons show up? How does that play out?
Well, they initially take Jack's daughter hostage.
I think Meredith is her name.
Meredith, yeah. They take Meredith hostage, and they're trying to get Danny to tell them where Jack is and get more information out of Danny about what's happening and what's going on, like how much do you guys really know. And it ends up culminating with like Jack coming back to the house. Well, I guess I should say Danny is smart enough. He kind of offers the bad guys a bribe, but the bribe he offers them is the fake cash that he'd been shown by Jack. And when Charles Dance's character when Benedict throws it into the fireplace, it burns red, which is something Slater said would happen. If you burn it, it burns funny colors. And Jack's on his way back to the house. He sees the red smoke coming out of the chimney. He knows something's wrong. So he uses a sort of decoy who's a dorky kid that they were expecting to stop by as sort of a decoy. And he busts his way in. It turns into a huge fight with Benedict and his goons. And Meredith manages to get a gun away from him.
She kicks some ass, Sonya Blade style.
She does. She kicks some total Mortal Kombat ass. Does not get the fatality anybody, unfortunately.
No heads are removed.
No heads are removed.
PG-13, my friend.
Right. And but Benedict ends up getting away. But he leaves behind his fake eye, his glass eye.
Right.
It's not really glass.
Real quick, Alan, what did you think of the action touches in this? Like as far as like what actually went down action wise?
Like, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, as far as like Arnold coming in through the ceiling and like pointing the guys' guns at each other and all the crazy shit that happened.
Oh yeah, I mean it's in line with the whole movie and just how ridiculous it is. Like you mentioned it, they distract him with the Asian kid, and then Arnold just kind of drops down through the ceiling perfectly. He grabs the guy's guns. They're shooting each other. He's just doing flips. He's dodging bullets. It's just a total ridiculous action.
I love it. It's so good. It's delicious.
Right? Well, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's like, here's the one action star, badass action star, man, can drop into any room through any means and dispatch like 24 bad guys without really getting injured.
And this is why I love Fast and the Furious movies after 5. Seriously. And I know we talk about this, the three of us, a lot about the Fast and the Furious movies. And I defend them a lot against Steve usually. And Alan's cool. Alan remains neutral.
Gabby's letter specifically said that I'm amazing. And then Alan's not. So I'm sorry.
You printed that out, did you?
I've got it on the wall in my bedroom. I go to sleep reading it.
So anyway, Steve, a man that can appreciate some satirical action surely can appreciate Hobbs and Shaw.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by appreciate. I'm going to sound like Bill Clinton at an impeachment hearing right now. It depends on what the meaning of the word is.
I did not appreciate that movie.
Right? I mean, I appreciate that it's a movie.
Jesus. Man, we're seeing it, bro. And we're reviewing. Anyway,
so which one are you paying for my ticket?
We're going halves.
Right.
We'll start a
GoFundMe.
Kickstarter or GoFundMe. Pay for Steve to see Hobbs and Shaw.
You know what? We could start a GoFundMe where the money only goes to buy movie tickets to make me sit through movies I don't want to see. I would be willing to do that. If the crowd out there is willing to fund it, I will see movies I'm absolutely not interested in seeing. I know I'm right.
Well, maybe if we ever have more than 78 subs on YouTube,
right,
we'll look into that.
Joke's on you when they raise $200,000 and you lose your mind.
It's cool. I'll just start making a scene in the lobby. Wouldn't be the first time.
So during this whole action scene, like Arnold leaves the house and he's like chasing down a car. The kid gets on like a little girl's bike and he decides it'd be fun to play chicken himself against one of the villain's cars. And while he's like, pedaling toward the car that's oncoming, he realizes, oh shit, this only works for the hero. So he like kind of veers off. And there's a moment that I just have to talk about. It's where when he veers off, he like crashes his bike, but he somehow goes up a ramp that we don't see. And then they do this like weird, like pseudo ET shot.
Yeah.
Where he like flies against the silhouette of like the moon and it just shows him from like a flat angle and he lands on a house like ET style. It is like, what? That's not even an action movie. Like,
yeah,
I guess you just have to do that if a kid's on a bike and there's a moon out.
Yeah, he somehow gets like all this like air unexplainably, and when he comes crashing down from this huge height with the silhouette of the moon, he's like still fine. Like he's kind of like roughed up, but he's like, oh man. And
you don't really get super hurt in these.
Yeah, but he doesn't get hurt.
Cool. But all this shit that goes down, there's an explosion because like the guy leaves his eye behind, which is a bomb. Basically, Jack gets fired, so he's no longer a cop. But like that really has no relevance to what happens anyway. It's just like a thing that's supposed to happen in these kind of movies,
Yeah, I love that scene. That's like what Steve was saying about earlier. The police chief's just all mad and yelling at him. It's like, yeah, you're fired.
Now, they decide their next stop is going to be at this like big like mafia funeral. There's like one of these mob members that died, and Benedict or his boss in the movie, like they planted some kind of like bomb in the body or something. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. Yeah, but do any of you remember the details?
So, Jack Slater was talking to this guy he knew, Practice.
Yeah, John Practice.
And
F. Murray Abraham.
He invited him earlier in the movie to the funeral. Why? I don't even know why. This part, I got to talk about that because I feel like this whole scene was unnecessary.
Where Practice like double crosses him.
Yeah, and the whole scene with the funeral.
When they make multiple Mozart Amadeus jokes.
Yeah, there's a lot of Amadeus jokes in here.
Right, because F. Murray Abraham played Salieri in the movie adaptation of the stage play Amadeus.
Yes.
And hugely fictionalized, but in that version of Mozart's life story, he and Salieri are massive rivals, and Salieri eventually engineers a situation in which Mozart gets sent away. And which never really happened in real life, but like, I guess early 90s, the adults in the audience would have gotten it. I didn't get the reference the first time I saw the movies. I was 10. I wasn't familiar with Amadeus, right? Yeah. I didn't get the reference until I was 14 or 15 years old, and I finally had seen the movie. And I can't imagine at this point, as sucky as it is to say, that anybody under 20 is watching this movie anymore. But, anybody who did, if you showed this to your daughter, she'd have no idea that was even a joke. Like, what the fuck is Amadeus? Like...
She's actually well-versed in...
Right? Your daughter, I'll give credit. She probably would, but
So during that whole double-cross situation with Practice... Practice basically has him held at gunpoint and then the villains show up. But the important part is Whiskers gets some screen time.
Here we go.
Tell us about that, Alan.
So Practice double crosses them. Then he locks them up with the handcuffs. But this is where Danny has the key he got earlier. So he gets out of the handcuffs. He tries to flip the tables on them, and he does for a moment. But then... someone else shows up and gets him back again.
There's a lot of back and forth.
It's a back and forth. But
it's
the
pretty
last
much a bunch of bullshit until Whiskers shows up.
Because it's back and forth and you're like, oh no. And then Whiskers shoots the guy.
With a very cartoon sounding effect from his cartoon gun, which I guess can kill a real person. Unlike, I guess it is very much unlike Who Framed Roger Rabbit in that way. Where the cartoon gun has cartoon bullets that each do different things related to their gimmicky personality. Do you remember that shit, Steve? I know it's a total aside, but do you remember Eddie Valiant's cartoon gun?
Absolutely, I do.
He's got the Native American that has a tomahawk.
Yeah, each of the bullets has got a different personality.
Yeah,
I love that.
All different kinds of Old West guys.
Right.
When he shoots him here, though, when Whiskers shoots him, it makes the cartoon bullet gun sounds. And you just kind of see him fall over. You never actually see bullets enter him or any blood or any kind of effect. You just see him kind of oh no, I've been shot.
Yeah.
And it's because I think you mentioned that this is supposed to be PG-13.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger was really, really attached to that idea. He was one of the executive producers, and he was big that this movie had to be PG-13. And I think he was right about this. One of his points was that you wanted kids roughly the age of the Danny character to go see the movie in theaters and identify with him. You wanted to be able to get 12, 13, 14-year-old kids in who themselves probably imagined being action stars and being in action movies and going to the theater and being like, oh my God, what would it be like if I could enter the world of all these movies? And he felt very strongly that if it were rated R, it would have to be aimed at a different audience. And it just wouldn't, it couldn't be that movie and be rated R. It would have to be something different.
Which is fine. I get it. I agree. And in this scene, it is PG-13 because, like I said, he just falls over. You can tell he's shot, but there's no effects to him getting shot. There's no blood.
Right.
On that same note, though, how does that explain the end when Arnold gets shot? He gets shot straight through the chest at the end. And that one's it's not the most graphic thing, but that one's
there is some blood.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the MPAA before.
Yeah, it's inconsistent.
Dude, you're never going to know how much you can show,
Right.
And it's why didn't they show Practice getting shot, but Arnold gets fucking straight blasted?
And there are these loosey-goosey rules. I remember reading that the MPAA does have a specific limit on how many times the word fuck can be said before the movie gets an R rating.
Once, right?
I think it actually ends up being way more than that because Matt Parker and Trey Stone specifically engineered the South Park movie to have just under that number to ensure they wouldn't get an R rating based on the use of the word fuck. Oh. Yeah. I don't remember what the exact number is, but they specifically were well, how many are we allowed? All right, let's do 2 less than that.
That's so garbage. Fuck that.
But they knowing what they know and what we've talked about, they kind of enjoyed fucking with the MPAA.
I would. That's so garbage.
Right? But it's one of these things where a little bit of blood in the right context you can get away with. So,
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll run us through what happens next relatively quickly. It's the funeral scene. Yep. So essentially it's a bunch of mob people. One of their fellows had died. They're having this big funeral, and it's a bunch of Italians. In the body, I guess there's some kind of bomb. So Arnold's goal is to get it out of there. So he runs up to see the body. A bunch of people are viewing it kind of one at a time. And he does this whole gag where he's like, this man's still alive. So he picks up the body and he's like carrying it like down, trying to get it away from all the people. And, you know, he's like, is there a doctor? This man's still alive. And one guy's like, oh, I'm a doctor. And he just like knocks him out. And then he keeps going. He tries to like distract all these people, but they're all mob people. So they have guns. So they like all take out their guns. Like every single person there, like grandmas, nuns, the pastor, like every single person there has like Uzis basically.
You see one of them like pulling out of their purse.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're all mob people and it's an action movie.
Like, I want to go back a second because I forgot to mention it. We were talking about Charles Dance, and I like him. But apparently they offered the Benedict part to Alan Rickman originally, who was the bad guy in the first Die Hard, which Tiernan also directed.
Yeah, that was great.
And they referenced the ending to that a couple of times with the bad guy falling off the roof. But apparently they ended up offering the part to Charles Dance, at least partly because he was willing to take it for less money. And when Dance found out that was true, he got a t-shirt made saying, I'm cheaper than Alan Rickman, and just wore it around the set.
He's also not even in the fucking same league at all as Alan Rickman, in my opinion. So,
ooh, I don't agree with you about that, but I do think that Rickman had a lot more opportunity to show off how good he was than Dance has. So, I don't know.
Dan sucks. Anyway,
do you know? Can you name something else he's been in aside from Game of Thrones, this, and Alien 3?
Okay, Dracula Untold.
Dude, that's a horrible movie. That whole movie, you can't use that as the one example. Look, like Schwarzenegger's never been anything. Alan Rickman was in some bad movies too. Like. That can't be the one thing you judge the rest of his career on.
No, he's all right.
Right, fine. You don't have to like him, but that's not a fair reason not to like him. Everything about that movie's terrible.
I think you're right. He's all right. I just don't like that movie.
Right, that movie's awful. No argument about that.
Which is another movie I want to review because it's so bad it's good, kind of.
Right.
It is funny. Anyway, so Arnold Schwarzenegger is trying to get this corpse that has a bomb in it out of this building. There's tons of people firing at him. It's basically this huge action scene where he's just trying to get away. The kid is operating this huge crane, and now they're all on the very top of a building, so he's using the crane in clever ways to, like, clear out the crowd, and to, like, he uses the hook to snag the body, and basically, they go from this building, which is, I think you guys said it was in LA, it's like the Hyatt.
Oh, it's in Long Beach. It's the Hyatt Regency on Shoreline in Long Beach.
Okay, yeah. So that's where this is. They established that a few times, right? Based on like the location, and it shows the Hyatt out front.
Yeah, and the practice character does. He says that the funeral is going to be in Long Beach. Isn't really specific about it beyond that, but if you've been there and you know the hotel, that's what it is.
Well, basically, this action scene ends with them getting the body off the building, but they land. They basically kind of fall off the building, but slowly because of the crane, right? They kind of like, they catch the crane and they're lowered into somehow the La Brea tar pits.
And it says the La Brea tar pits.
Yeah,
too.
so it's definitely like the La Brea tar pits, right?
That like the part where they get dropped is right in front of it's the complex where the Aquarium of the Pacific and the Long Beach Convention Center are, which are like literally across the other side of, I think, Shoreline from where the hotel is. And yeah, the La Brea tar pits are literally like 30 miles from there. So that'd have to be the longest crane in the history. And it's weird that not only are those two places 30 miles from each other, but somehow the La Brea tar pits is now in front of the Long Beach Convention Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting how you can move tar pits around like that. I had no idea they were portable that way.
And it says it in the movie. It's not like it's implied or we're just guessing. Like it says it. When he drops them in there, it says La Brea tar pits.
Right.
I just want to say real quick, when I was a kid, when I was in the Dino Club, I got to go to the La Brea tar pits, and it really like firmly grounded me in as like an elite member of the team. And I think it was my grandma Nancy that took me. Shout out to Grandma if you're listening. She doesn't listen, but anyway.
What up, Grandma Nancy?
I got this like it must have been fake, but I got a T-Rex tooth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. They sell like those like $5 like.
I ended up getting the Velociraptor claw.
Yeah, I saw another kid had that.
Right.
And like I felt like I should have got that afterwards because he was like holding it in his hand like it was a claw.
That's what I would do.
And I remember holding mine and like it was more awkward. So I was like, I should have got that. I would have looked cooler like him.
Pretty sure I got it taken away from me a couple of times for like telling my brother I was going to cut him open with it. Like,
oh, you gave him the whole Alan Grant speech?
Yeah, I was like, hey, come here, let me see if this works.
Try to imagine yourself in the Mesozoic era.
Right. My mom's like, nope. You're giving that thing to me.
You do the whole, they're still alive. You're still alive.
When they start eating you. Like, fuck. Oh, God.
I can just imagine you repeating that shit. Like every few weeks you say that to your brother.
And my mother specifically told me that the kid in that scene Grant does that to reminded her of me. And I was like, fuck, that kid is me.
Oh, you were a little shit like that kid? It's like a giant turkey.
Right? Except for I really love dinosaurs. I'm not going to deny that I was a little shit, but I wouldn't have been shitty about dinosaurs because I thought they were fucking awesome.
Yeah, that show was pretty great.
Right. That show was great. I loved that show. The last episode of that show was fucking depressing.
Dude. Oh, I see.
The finale of that show was them waiting to be killed. Honest to God, I won't talk about it any more than that, but the finale of the last episode of that show ends with them waiting to die. Yeah. In any case.
Anyways.
I think we talked about... Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Tangents aside. I love going on tangents. They're so fun. All right. So basically the next thing that happens is Benedict has the ticket that is basically the thing that transports you from the fake world to the real world or vice versa, right? He got that off Danny earlier in the movie. When he got captured, he like checked his pockets and he just like kept it. Now he realizes that this thing can take you out of the movie world into the real world. And he uses that to go into the real world, right?
Yeah, it has the same effect we saw when Danny first figured it out. It starts like glowing and it opens up like that temporal dimension where like when he puts his hand in, it goes through the wall and like he's going into the alternate universe.
Right. And we see him test it out a couple times, but at this point, Jack basically just like drives into Benedict's house to capture him. And Benedict escapes by just like hopping realities, Thanos style.
No, he escapes when Arnold throws one of the henchmen and it knocks him into the wall. And Arnold and Danny are like, where the hell did he go?
Right.
Because they didn't know he had the tickets. Like they throw the henchmen and they just kind of disappear when they fall into the dimension.
And this kind of takes us into our final act, which is it was something that you kind of were hoping for while you're watching this movie for the first time, which is the movie Jack Slater going into the real world where real Arnold Schwarzenegger exists. And they actually even go to like the red carpet premiere. There's a few things that go on. I don't know if Steve, you want to touch on any of the minor details.
There's not a whole lot there, although I will say for the premiere that was supposed to be a New York premiere and they filmed in Times Square, they had Times Square shut down between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. every day for a week straight.
Holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit is the right response. Like, I think anybody in the U.S., regardless of whether or not you've ever visited New York, has got some conception of what Times Square is like, that it is a massive tourist destination. Hundreds of thousands or more tourists per month pass through Times Square. That's on top of the fact that it's like in the center of Manhattan. It's huge amount of traffic thoroughfare. This is a significant place. And to have it closed off for 12 hours a day between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. for a week straight in a city that is a city that is so 24 hours, it's referred to as the city that never sleeps. Like that was a huge thing. A lot of people were not happy about that. And yeah, big deal production. But other than that, not a whole lot I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of, they futz around. They try to find Benedict and they realize it's not going to be so easy because they're in the quote unquote real world where the ramifications of Jack Slater's actions should be more severe.
Right. Oh,
they're just slightly more severe, I think.
Right. I was going to say, I really, really liked the last act because I loved how finally, I love that they went back to the real world quote. And now Jack Slater couldn't be Jack Slater. Like, he could get hurt and he can't do all this crazy shit.
Well, I mean, kind of, because he goes to steal a car and he, breaks out the window with his hand. And then they do steal the car. And instead of his hand being, cut up to shit and broken, he's just like, yeah, my hand hurts. It actually hurts. Like, it's like, okay.
That's almost exactly what I was going to say. I liked the third act or the last act, but they underutilized that. They didn't stress enough. They were like you said, it's like, oh, it kind of minorly inconveniences him. I thought he was going to start like breaking ribs or like, cutting up his hand or like tripping and like
loses an eye.
Yeah. He starts he kills a civilian or something.
There's like another thing where he's shooting at the villain, Benedict,
Yeah.
and he's like, check out these explosions or something. And he just like starts shooting and it just creates a couple bullet holes and the guy gets away. It's not a big thing.
I guess there was one other little touch point there. Outside the movie theater, there's a giant, it's supposed to be a 75-foot tall balloon of the Jack Slater character from the film that Schwarzenegger's promoting.
That's right.
And that balloon is holding, it's Schwarzenegger or Slater holding a handgun. When they originally designed that scene, the balloon of Slater was supposed to be holding 3 sticks of dynamite. But in 93, frightening to think about all this from this far out.
Oh, was that the Oklahoma?
Actually, a few years before that, even worse than that, weirdly, there was a failed attempt to blow up the World Trade Centers in 93.
Oh, yeah.
By people affiliated with some of the same organizations that eventually pulled off 9/11. And when they were pulling the permits to be able to do this, I think the mayor and some other people said, hey, can we not have him holding sticks of dynamite? And they changed it to a gun. Yeah.
I want to get...
Or a badge. Maybe it's a badge. It's whatever it is.
I want to get meta for a second because this is weird to think about. So Arnold is in a movie. The real Arnold, let's say the real actor is in a movie where he plays an actor in a movie. And at this point, they're getting back to him as an actor in the real world of this movie. He plays like 3 different fucking roles.
He's playing both a fictional version of himself and a fictional character that the fictional version of himself plays in fictional movies.
And then he even pretends to be the real version of himself as the fictional version.
And all of this is a real Arnold or a real person playing a movie.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, dude, this is just way fucking Inception.
It's a lot of layers to keep track of.
It makes me trip when I think about that. Like, holy shit.
God.
It's pretty good. I mean,
it's a lot more satisfying than Eddie Murphy playing 6 people in a fat suit.
Not a Nutty Professor fan, I take it.
Not much. Although it was better than the Clumps.
I mean, I liked him playing multiple people in Coming to America. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's when he was still making good movies. You know.
What's his last good movie? Ghostbusters?
Ghostbusters.
He didn't quite make it to that one.
The second 48 Hours wasn't terrible. The Beverly Hills Cop sequels they're not great, but they're sort of entertaining. Those weren't too
Dr.
bad.
Dolittle.
Yeah, I'm not going to include Dr. Dolittle on my list of good Eddie Murphy movies. But
I remember liking Dr. Dolittle. I have a heart, Steve. It's a kid's movie.
Nah. No. I mean, I think I liked it a little bit when I was a kid. I don't know, when was his last movie? I would venture, I can't remember exactly what year which one was which, but I would venture his last movie came out prior to 1995.
Dang. Right. So Nutty Professor really is the cutoff, which I'm pretty sure came out in 96.
I mean, The Clumps, Pluto Nash.
Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion. What was that one about the giant fat Norbit? Norbit. I mean, come on.
AKA the greatest movie of all time.
Right. I mean, look, his list post 95 is a lot of literally movies that are all on. Those movies are all on the lists of the worst movies ever made. I'll give him this much. Adam Sandler, I think, has got him beat because Jack and Jill and That's My Boy came out a year apart from each other, and they're both included on the list of worst movies of all time. So, yeah.
Yeah, Adam Sandler's been on the outs, I think, for longer, but
that's
a conversation for another day.
I'm not sure Adam Sandler's ever been in a movie that's actually good. Because the last
Punch Drunk Love. Boom.
I mean, it's not bad the way his other movies are bad, but I've always argued that movie was way overhyped and was never really that good.
I like that movie.
It's okay. I know.
PTA, buddy.
I have a friend of mine, and I have had, somebody I'm close friends with, have had vicious arguments about that movie because he loves it. He also really loves The Majestic with Jim Carrey. He holds them up both as being examples of those people doing serious dramatic work, and I despise them. There was one night, particularly, we were drinking, but the two of us got into an argument about those two movies so vicious he kicked me out of his house. Honestly. I mean, I said some really unfriendly things, but still, he was like, get the fuck out. Seriously, he's like, I don't want to talk to you anymore right now. Like, we're going to get in a fight. And like, no, that's, you know, but honestly, right? In any case.
That's crazy.
Right?
Okay. Man, the shit that goes down in your life, Steve, I couldn't even imagine.
Honestly, people don't believe me. There was one point with Alan where he's like, basically, I wouldn't believe that had happened to you if I hadn't been here to see it. Like, crazy people are magnetized to me. It's weird. Look, my life, fucking all sorts of stories, people are like, that never happened. I'm like, I will find someone to prove it to you. It fucking happened. Like...
I'm going to take us back into this, so that's
okay.
all right.
All right, yeah. Are we talking about a movie?
All right, so Benedict, our villain, he has unleashed the Ripper. So he has his ticket, so he can pull people out of movies. So he pulls in, you know, Jack's greatest adversary, the guy that killed his son, and that's your favorite, right?
Tom Noonan.
Yeah.
You also find out, or they also figure out that he's going to use the ticket to jump to other movies. So we're going to get even crazier. They're going to go through other dimensions, and who knows what the fuck's going to happen.
Star Wars, hopefully.
They have a Dracula. They circled Dracula.
Yeah.
When he's like reading the newspaper, it's circled. And
it's like the 90s Dracula. It's Francis Ford Coppola's, like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
God, it was almost such a good movie.
He's gonna bring in bad accent Keanu Reeves to come do something.
Fucking, it's like, God damn it, why Coppola? Why? It's like that and casting his daughter in The Godfather Part 3. Like, the two stupidest things he ever did with his career. God damn. Anyway.
So we have our red carpet premiere of Jack Slater 4, and that's where our heroes are going. So there we have actual Arnold Schwarzenegger and actual other actors that are in the Jack Slater movie. But then we have Jack Slater and Danny and the Ripper are all there, and we kind of have a showdown. I don't know. Do you guys want to talk about the little interactions that happen before I get to the showdown at all?
Yeah, I like the one where the Ripper shows up, and they ask him what's going on, but he's from the fake movie universe.
Scary. Let's ask him a question, okay?
Wow, will you
See if
look
we can get him over here. Hey,
Look at this, a method villain. Rip, come here. What brings you here tonight?
I thought I might kill someone.
Maybe just start with your design.
He's like, oh, I'm going to kill some people. Or what does he say?
Yeah, they just think it's the actor being in character and in character costume.
And they love it. They're like, oh, look how scary he is. He's an actor. And then they show his agent or his like manager. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, get over here. Like, where you just show up dressed like the characters? Like, what the fuck?
They basically tell him you're going to get typecasted for the rest of your life if you do shit like this.
And then they show the real actor. And he shows up to the premiere like normal. So
the reporters were all tripped out.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
What are you doing? But the agent and the reporters all refer to the quote unquote real life version of him as Tom. So it must be like alternate universe Tom Noonan as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that scene when he's the Ripper.
There's another kind of funny moment where like while trying to stop the Ripper, Jack Slater like encounters Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they kind of like are both surprised when they look at each other, but then the real Arnold Schwarzenegger is like, oh, you're the best impersonator I've ever seen of me. He's like, we should book you at parties and stuff. It's like clearly like, imagine seeing someone that looked fucking identical to you and being like, oh, you're the best impersonator of me that's ever existed. It's like, no, come on. Like, that's your twin. It's not Danny DeVito. That's him.
So if they gave you a gun and told you how to shoot the fake robot Arnold, which one would you shoot?
Shoot myself.
They did in the movie. I mean, I know it's makeup, but they did look like pretty much exactly the same for the movie. I don't know what stunt double they used or how they did that, but they
what do you mean?
The same.
Oh no, they didn't use a stunt double. You mean when there was the two Arnolds talking to each other?
When he was like, "You're the best impersonator," like, how did they do that?
No, it's a camera trick.
It's a compositing trick.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. I mean, well,
I thought it was like some other guy.
When they do that kind of thing, when they have a shot where one of the two has his back to the camera, in those instances, they'll use a double. They'll have a double, but when you're seeing both faces, they use a compositing trick. And they've been able to do it a lot longer than you might think. Like, they used to do it for the Patty Duke show back like in the early 60s.
But that's an older trick because now they just do CGI.
They might, but I mean, it's actually basically the same thing, except for before modern computers, they would have had to do it physically by combining film elements.
Yeah.
By literally compositing different strips of film.
But now that's digital.
Yeah, now what they would do, they still have to film the scene twice. It's just instead of combining strips of film, they remove one Arnold and deposit him into the other. Yeah, process is basically the same now.
Okay.
Anyway, I thought it was kind of funny when they meet each other and stuff, but where it culminates is like on the roof. We kind of get a recreation of the very beginning of the movie where the Ripper and Jack are confronting each other. Steve, can you tell us how that scene ends?
It's pretty interesting, actually. I don't really understand the mechanics of how it's supposed to work, but like the Ripper character apparently is aware of the fact that he's been, like, that they've done this before. Benedict at one point sort of vaguely explains to him that, like, you're in the real world now. I've removed you from this movie, but he must have been pulled from a pretty late point in the movie because he seems to be aware of the fact that, like, he's killed Slater's son, and they've had this conversation before. And he basically says, let's just cut to the fucking chase. And he grabs Danny and tries to chuck him off the roof. And as an audience member, for a moment there, you're meant to think he really has gone off the roof. You don't know what's happened to him. And then he chucks his axe at Arnold and trying to kill him. Arnold ends up cutting an electric utility line going into the building. It's been raining out, and he touches it. He kind of gets himself up on a ledge and then touches this line to the wet roof, and the electricity runs through the water, and it fries the bad guy.
Right.
Fries Tom Noonan. Not nearly as satisfying as when Carl gets electrified and John a mnemonic.
Yeah, it's PG-13. This
Not
goes
quite
back
Carl
to that
levels.
because you show him kind of moving, but it doesn't show like any kind of like graphic parts. Yeah, he's like, oh, he just got shocked. He's dead.
And then, I guess I should say though, like during the course of this, Arnold does get shot.
He gets shot because Benedict shows up.
Yeah, he gets shot because Benedict shows up.
So Danny's fine. He's hanging off the side of the roof. Arnold pulls him up, but then Benedict shows up, of course, and just like, boom, blasts him in the chest. And that's the scene that Alan mentioned earlier.
It's
you get to see
graphic.
blood.
Yeah.
I think for the first time.
Yeah.
And a decent amount of he's spitting up blood too, so, they got away with what they could. But basically, Arnold, or Jack Slater, is mortally wounded because he's in the real world. Now, they do stop Benedict by, I guess, shooting him directly in the eyeball.
Yeah. Slater manages to hit him right on his fake eye with a bullet, which, I mean, you'd think it would just, like, go through into his skull and kill him, but you gotta be more clever than that for a movie. So, it turns out all of his eyes are explosive.
Right.
Like the one found by the cops earlier in the film. And the bullet impact triggers the explosive mechanism inside the eye, and it blows itself up inside of Benedict's head.
Yes. And that destroys the ticket he has, which is the portal key or whatever.
Well, but it doesn't really, though, because you see it sort of fall to the street, right?
I thought it got blown up. I don't know.
You kind of see it fall to the street, and then it glows.
Yeah, I remember that. You do. You see you see it kind of glide down.
Sequel setup. Okay.
Exactly. Kind of like someone else could find this ticket. But, yeah.
Like the end of Sidekicks. Anyway.
You gotta have a living cast in order to make a sequel to that.
Oh, God.
It's all right.
Danica McKellar's still alive.
Thankfully.
She could be the sidekick. Anyway.
There's another great scene here, because after Arnold gets blasted, he's in the quote, real world, so he's like dying. He's not invincible. And then they should cut to this scene where the paramedics are trying to like save him or drive him to the hospital. And somehow they let Danny ride along too. And Danny keeps explaining, we have to go to the movies. Like, there's a guy who just got shot, and Danny's like, we got to go to the movies. You don't understand.
Doesn't make any sense. You just, let him go to the hospital. Like, they can save people from bullet wounds at the hospital.
No, you have to go to the movies.
You have to go to the movies.
To which, at the point, Danny grabs a gun, and I don't even know where he gets the gun
He has
from.
one, yeah.
Yeah, he has a gun. Then he just straight up holds the ambulance hostage.
No, he did grab it. Where did he grab it from?
I thought he had it like in his coat or something.
Yeah, because there's a scene where they do show him grabbing it, and I can't remember where he got it. But you do see him collect it at one point.
So he basically holds him at gunpoint, ends up driving the ambulance himself, and drives back to the movie theater because that's what has to be done.
Now, meanwhile, one small thing we glossed over is that at some point, the ticket opened up another movie. What movie were they watching where the Grim Reaper was on the screen?
They're watching The Seventh Seal, which is an Ingrid Bergman film. And although it's not really the Seventh Seal, the actor that played Death in that film, which is from the 50s, was a Swedish actor. They've recreated a scene from the film in which Death is playing a game of chess with someone. And in the recreation, Sir Ian McKellen is playing Death.
Yeah, so Ian McKellen, as the Grim Reaper, comes out of the screen, and he's just kind of walking around New York, just fucking killing people.
Yeah, it's really weird. He comes out of the movie, he like touches a cop, who then drops dead.
Yeah.
But then then he sees Jack and Danny and kind of follows them to the theater. And when he gets in there, Danny asks, "Are you here for me?" And Death is like, "No, I wanted to see him because he's not on any of my lists." And like, I get it, but it makes no sense. It's like, well, you're a movie version of Death. You shouldn't have a list that includes real world people either. So why'd you kill that cop?
Yeah, this is definitely
like a cop in the real world should not be on the list for death from a movie.
It's just a guy with the same name.
Okay,
you got the wrong guy. Yeah.
Right, a mistaken identity. There you go.
I also love how Danny's response is to like point a gun at him.
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm gonna see death. You're like, oh yeah, screw you.
Like, and he's come out of a movie, and like, what do you? I mean, I guess maybe the idea there is that now that Death is in the real world, he can be shot the way Jack was.
But yeah,
but still, it's kind of like a weird. Yeah, what are you doing? Pointing a gun at the Grim Reaper.
He's kind of a wise Death, you know. He's like,
he is.
You live long to be a grandfather.
Right.
He's Gandalf.
Right.
And it's Gandalf, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess it's probably worth mentioning, it's crossover, we talked about it, like there's in Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure, the second film.
Bogus Journey.
They one of them, I think Keanu, plays a game of chess with the Grim Reaper. Or
Battleship.
They end up playing Battleship, yeah.
A few other games too. Twister,
right.
Clue.
And it's a spoof on the movie that the audience in this movie is supposed to be seeing. Like there's the scene that we first see Death in Last Action Hero is a scene from the Seventh Seal where he's playing chess with somebody, and the moment from Bill and Ted is a spoof on that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't like this whole scene. That was kind of bugged me. Like you said, it didn't make sense. I feel like it was just not necessary.
I'm with you there, but I kind of like seeing Ian McKellen. He's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the scene for some reason, but also, yeah, it's totally unnecessary. I don't know.
But basically, they realize they need to get, you know, our main hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, back into his world so that he can survive the gunshot wound. And they realize they have another half of the ticket that was torn off earlier.
Death actually tells him that's what he would do.
Yeah, at first he calls him a dumb fuck, and then he tells him to go check
Death says, "Oh, I'd look for the other half," and then that's
like,
when
you're not
like,
smart,
yeah.
are you, kid? You're the fucking.
You're pointing a gun at Death. So
that
go
version
find the other
of
half.
Death just walks out of the theater back onto the streets of New York.
I know, that's the sequel.
Right?
Him just killing everyone.
There's a movie version of Death wandering around New York.
Just like gently touching people.
Yeah, and he can touch people and actually kill them.
I know, that's just John Wick.
It's just like this like leftover. This movie's like collateral damage. There's now an actual Grim Reaper wandering around.
Alan's right. We need to get the movie ticket to get John Wick out of there. He'll kill that motherfucker. He'll take him out. John Wick can take anyone out.
With a pencil.
Or get Thanos.
Yeah, I mean, John Wick can get hit by... How many taxis does he get hit by in the second one? 7, 12, 15? Guy gets hit by a taxi in that movie like once every 4 minutes.
Dude,
somehow it's not completely
you think
uninjured.
He gets fucking hurt in the second one? Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh,
Watch
yeah,
the third one.
yeah. Right? It's like, how many cars can a guy get hit by? Anyway.
So, okay, yeah, so... Slater makes it back into his world, and he arrives back at the police station. And I love this scene because they have like their emotional goodbye. He's like, "Oh, I'm back. You gotta go." And Danny kind of doesn't want to, but then it's like, "Fine, okay, he's back. Everything's good." Danny kind of goes back into the real world, and in the movie world, when they're examining Jack, one of the guys looks at him and he's like, "Oh, it's barely a flesh wound," because he's back in the movie world.
Or like getting shot in the chest is just like, "Oh, this bullshit."
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, you'll be fine."
We only do brain surgery here in this universe.
What's that other? It's like just one more of those action movie tropes, right? Like the main action can get shot like 24 times. He's never a bad injury. You know, like
it's barely a flesh wound.
I mean, look, it's fucking.
Your arm's off.
Right.
No, it isn't.
Right?
It's a flesh wound.
John McClane should have been dead like 40 times by now. And there's no way.
I mean, that franchise should have been dead after the first one. But anyway.
Look, if we could erase 2 and everything that came after 3, you've got a pair of really awesome movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could tell he's back because they don't care that he got shot. It's all fine.
And he's kind of accepted that he's a movie character now, and he likes his world at this point. It seems like he's come around to it, and he's just going to, like, live his best movie life, you know? And
yeah, I mean, you're kind of immortal in there, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless the people who created your franchise kill you, your character just literally lives forever.
But they leave this kind of open-ended. This opens up a whole can of worms. Like, he's just going to live like that forever? I mean, is he not going to have some kind of, like, existential crisis now that he knows
he's over
a real
it.
world?
He's over it.
He's already over it? He's like, oh, okay. Is he going to be over it in, like, another year? What about, like, 5 years or if he's, like, bored as fuck?
Dude, maybe that's the sequel. It's like it's 20 years later in movie land and Jack Slater's had a complete mental breakdown because he knows what's on the other side.
Well, think maybe he's killed everyone in his universe, like every single person. Like he's just like gone insane.
Right.
Well, this is a lot darker. Like Steve mentioned, I thought, not this exactly, but Steve, you said they wanted it to go a different direction like this.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the thing is the whole purpose of the original drafts was really that. It was like, what is this really like for this character, this perpetual violence? What is it like for the people living in the society around him? Like, what would happen if that action character came to a point of realizing that it was just this empty existence of endless shooting other people? And like, absolutely. Yeah. And then it just kind of devolved from that. Yeah.
And then it ends with him. He does realize it, and then it just kind of ends. He's like, oh, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that's where things wrap up. Did you guys have any other points you wanted to bring up about the ending before we go on to our next segment?
Not the ending specifically. There are two things I thought were worth touching on. Schwarzenegger, thought that this movie was his first real failure when it did not get accepted well, and actually...
Really?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was his opinion.
He made Red Sonja.
Right, which, thank God the remake of has been canned because Bryan Singer can't stop molesting people. But I don't mean to...
Are you happy about Bryan Singer molesting people?
I'm happy the movie got canned. I feel bad for anyone he assaulted, like, genuinely. Or allegedly assaulted, I guess I have to say, even though the evidence is pretty strong.
Whatever, get to the goddamn fucking point.
Right? But he thought this was his first real failure and actually thought that it might damage his career to the point that he wouldn't get other roles. And then I want to talk for a minute. I had to make a full note out of this one because I wouldn't have remembered all this. The merchandising for this movie. The merchandising effort for this movie was fucking insane. All right? 7 video games. A $20 million Burger King promotion. I'm going to take those two repeated. 7 video games, 7, and a $20 million Burger King promotion.
I'm going to speak on that real quick. So the Burger King, I saw a Burger King ad in the movie, the product placement. I'm pretty sure I played the Game Gear version of this game.
Right.
I kind of remember the game too.
And then it goes way beyond this. $36 million on a theme park ride. I don't remember the ride, but it did exist. Schwarzenegger gave 40 television interviews and 54 print interviews in a 24-hour period, setting a new personal record for him. My favorite of all of them.
How can you give that many interviews in a 24-hour period?
A lot of them, what they do is there's clips.
Oh, is where they have you in a room and they cycle people in?
Yeah, basically, yeah. You spend all day in one place and they just come through.
I see.
This is Arnold. Arnold's not a normal human being.
No, and like there are a lot of fun video clips of actors like at the end of the day doing that where they start getting pissy with the reporters. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
My favorite of all of this though, my 2 favorites. There was a 4-story inflatable Jack Slater, like the one from the movie that they displayed at the Cannes Film Festival, which is supposed to be a festival for like serious movies. Right. And then my favorite of all of them, they actually paid NASA to attach an ad for this movie to a rocket and sent it into space. It's the only movie to ever have an ad in
so
space.
Aliens could watch this shit? What the fuck is that for?
Right? Just to say that they did it.
It's like, I understand putting a movie on the side of a bus. People are going to see it. It's going to be in the back of their mind. Who the fuck's going to see that? Martians? Mars Attacks?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Independence Day aliens?
Right.
What is this?
So
we've come here to see Last Action Hero.
Quick recap.
If we get invaded, we know why.
Right? Because of this fucking movie. Like, quick recap though. 7 video games, $20 million on a Burger King ad, a $36 million theme park ride, a 4-story inflatable Jack Slater, a fucking space ad. Like, all of this was for this movie. That's the last little note I have on it. But the marketing campaign was nuts.
That's too much, man. It's just too crazy.
How much did this movie lose, or how much did it cost altogether versus how much it made?
Well, Steve can probably pull that up. In the meantime, let's go to ratings. While Steve is doing that, Alan, why don't you tell me your rating?
Ooh, okay. I give this movie 7 out of 10 golden tickets. I really did enjoy this movie, and the whole trope, the whole idea, or the whole principle, where it's just an insane world where nothing makes sense, and it's a parody on the action movies. I love that. I think that's hilarious. There's a lot of good funny scenes. Like when it does that, that's the magic of this whole movie to me. That's the point of it. Like he's in the whole action fake universe, and that's what makes this movie. I would actually give it a higher score, but I did feel like it was unnecessarily long. And there were some weird parts, like we mentioned with death at the end, which I don't know didn't fit well. The whole scene where they have to get the body from that's filled with the explosive, that was kind of unnecessary. So I just felt like they didn't capitalize enough on the whole trope that makes this movie, the whole action world, how wacky it is. And especially at the end when they go into the real world, they didn't emphasize that enough, where like his powers are useless.
Fair enough. So not perfect, but pretty good.
Yeah, but I did love it, and it was fun.
Steve, you pull up the numbers?
Yeah, so it's complicated going over all of it, but the easiest bullet point to touch on, according to the studio, they initially lost $26 million on the film at the box office. There was some complication with that. Jurassic Park having opened at the week before was part of it, but then there was something else that came out. God, what was it? It ended up in number 3 at the box office instead of 2. Like it got beat by Jurassic Park and something else. But anyway, they said on initial theatrical release they lost $26 million. I think they ended up making a lot of that back in home video and overseas, but. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to go next, then I'll pass it to you, Steve, as far as ratings.
Sure.
I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's pretty good, like Alan said, and a lot of the problems are what you said, but the way I would articulate it, I guess, is that it could have been trimmed down. It's a little bit too long, and things could have been tightened up. I get why they had it as long as they did, because it would be hard to cut around the movie in its current state. A lot of the things are required, especially for some of the more dramatic, like character building stuff. But it is a little bit longer than it needs to be, I think. But other than that, I think it's a good time. It is what it is very well in the terms of it being like a funny action movie that gets turned on its head, that actually has action movie stars and directors, and it's got good cameos, which I like. I think it's a pretty good time. The kid isn't a little dipshit, so that's cool. He's all right, you know?
Austin O'Brien was pretty cool.
What do you think, Steve? What's your rating?
I'm gonna give this movie a 7 out of 10 jacked action stars. Super pumped up jacked action stars. The reviews on this film, both critical and community, are largely not that great. It certainly isn't perfect, but I think it's kind of a clever concept. I think it's a really interesting idea. This kid fantasizes about being in the movies and is obsessed with these action movies. As someone who was a kid that loved escaping into the fantasy world of films, that really spoke to me at the time and now. I think it's clever, draw him into the world of the movies and what are the different rules when he's in the movie world versus the real world. And obviously that got stretched a little bit. But, I think overall, though, clever concept, mostly pretty well implemented. The flaws are not big enough to ruin it. So I'll go 7 out of 10.
Yeah, you're right. I think to expand on that, I think I wanted to say this earlier, but the two strongest points of this movie are the concept and the comedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
This movie runs on those two things for the most part.
Right.
The concept is killer. It's great.
I think the biggest challenge for it at this point, especially for anyone younger than about 25, and really even maybe a little further up than that, is just going to be that, like, a lot of the tropes they were playing off aren't seen as commonly anymore. Like, there was a very specific style of action film being made during the 80s and early 90s, and action films aren't really, there's certain overlap, but they're not really made that way anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
there's a more extreme version of this movie that's a independent film. It's only about 30 minutes long called Kung Fury.
Oh, I love Kung Fury.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
so good.
But that's it. I mean, that one, fortunately, it seems like a lot of younger people were super into it. So I guess they're reaching back and kind of finding the reference points. But that one is such a mid to late 80s reference point. It's like, it's weird to think that, like, I mean, I guess it's the same way, like, we may have discovered, like, 60s era stuff through our parents. But, like,
sure.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask that quick note. What other movie is like this or has done this concept? Because I thought that was a pretty unique idea.
That's the only good one that I know of.
Is there any other ones that's tried this? I can't think of any movie even like this.
There's one movie, God, what's it called? With John Candy, where he's a writer of, I think, soap operas, and he ends up getting sucked into the world of the soap opera that he created. That's the closest thing I can think of to being like this. It's a pretty funny movie. Dated, but funny.
And I don't know that anything has this exact thing in its concept, but, you know, there's like Pleasantville.
Okay, where they get sucked into the universe.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is what it is pretty uniquely, and that's the concept.
Oh, Brain Scan. I hope that ends up being in the hat soon.
So we got our ratings. We're not going to do a hat, speaking of which, this time around. Next time on Big Dumb Movie, we're having another special guest from Spoilers, a man that I've been really excited to have on. His name's Pappy. He's the guy that created that podcast. And we decided that we're going to be watching a very 90s film that I liked very much as a kid, which sucks. It's called Little Giants. So for those that don't know, it's a little kid football movie. It's of that, 90s kids sports movies that were ever so popular at the time.
It's got Rick Moranis in it.
It does have Rick Moranis in it and Ed O'Neill. So there's that.
Yeah, like I said, it's got Rick Moranis in
it. So thank you guys for listening. If you want to write in, you can email us at bigdumbmovie@gmail.com. Also check out our Instagram page, Big Dumb Movie. We have a Facebook page. But most importantly, if you are listening to this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up or give us a comment below. The thumbs up helps us get some more traffic, so it's very beneficial. Even if you're not on YouTube, come over to YouTube, give this episode a thumbs up. And the others too. I know we're asking a lot, but come on, help us out here. You sat with us for 2 hours. You owe us something, right?
Right, yeah, you owe us.
I was just fucking around. But if you can, thank you very much. So I guess we'll see you next time with Pappy when we do Little Giants. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Good night.